Powered by Riverside FM.
The curse of being too ahead of the times is that it can take years or even centuries before work is accepted and reputations are restored. Take for example the story of Austrian physicist Ludwig Boltzmann. In the 1870s, he theorized that the observable qualities of matter, temperature, pressure, etc., were dictated by statistical relationships between atoms. His peers in the scientific community at the time were not receptive to his theories, and he spent his entire life trying to convince people that he was right. Which, of course, he was. Today, his theories are the foundations of modern physics. A similar case could be made for the subject of this episode. In 1998, just a year before the first PC graphics card was released to the public, a small team of industry veterans looked to redefine games similarly from the ground up. Like Boltzmann's theories, they would eschew away from the hands of directed set pieces in their title, and instead conflict would be completely driven by the interaction of systems. It featured no levels, a completely rigid body physics simulation, and behaviourally simulated and physics modelled dinosaurs. Although the game was played from a first-person perspective with plenty of guns, this wouldn't be a Doom-like experience. Instead, players would be able to manipulate the world via a fully articulated arm, putting creative problem-solving on par with mindless shooting. In the years since, groundbreaking elements of this title would start to emerge elsewhere, and some, like its enormous jungle environment, became a benchmark others used for technical demonstrations. But at the time, due to technology not quite matching ambitions, and a strict deadline eating into research and development, this game couldn't quite reach the level of quality needed to win over the average gamer. Like its Dinosaur antagonists, the creative forces behind this title have long since gone extinct, even if perhaps we see traces of them in modern creatures. But like the franchise this title comes from, is there an argument to be made that perhaps this game should be cloned and reintroduced into the modern gaming landscape? On this episode of Bullet Time, we look at DreamWorks Interactive's 1998 shooter, Trespasser.
Actually, I could bring us into Trespasser by talking about the dream I had.
Oh, do you want to start the pod? Yeah, I was gonna. I wasn't sure whether to start the podcast with asking you to. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to start with your Trespasser dream?
Yeah, okay, so it was after the first couple of play sessions I had, and I think if you know what Trespasser is, for the listeners, it will make more sense, but I had this weird dream where... So, Trespasser came out, and it was a commercial flop. It didn't sell terribly well.
That's why it's on this podcast.
Yeah, so I had this weird dream that to make some of the money back, the studio that made it, which this is a dream, so it was DreamWorks that made it, funnily enough, but so to make some of their money back, they sold off the engine to other developers to recoup some of the costs, so there were a bunch of like Trespasser light games, and I was like, James will probably want me to play these for the podcast. But they were all educational cooking games. So it was like you had to pick up an egg and break it on a table with like Trespasser.
Oh, interesting. Like Surgeon Simulator, but for cooking.
Yeah, it was like this fucking 90s version of Surgeon Simulator, but completely unironic. It was like, this game will teach you how to cook, but you had to use like wobbly arm controls to pick up every utensil and move through your kitchen.
That's really funny because, yeah, I was saying last time I was chatting to Chariot about this was well, actually, I might get into my theory a little bit about this game kind of as we get to it, but saying that it was like a bit of training, like simulation software is kind of weirdly apt. When you say this was a dream, like, were you in like the meeting rooms for like?
No, I was just playing it for the podcast. I was like,
I was
in this bizarro reality where these games existed, and I was like, I better download and play them. I should have been able to tell it was a dream when it didn't require Chariot to help me install them to play.
Wait a minute, something's up.
something's up here. I was able to just run this. I think.
You didn't have to download the patch from the cooking Trespasser
And
forum.
then modify an INI to make it run in fucking 4K.
I don't know why, but I'm laughing like you've seen the film Inception, right? The fucking you know how like in that film they have totems where it's like, oh, we know if it's a dream or not because we use our totems. Like, so one of them has a weighted die, so he always knows like what number is meant to come up. And then fucking Leo has a spinning top. But for some reason your totem is Chariot, and you're like, if Chariot isn't walking me through a technical thing, then this is very obviously a dream.
It's funny because not quite a totem, but I do have that thing where I've noticed every time I've realized I'm in a dream is realizing, oh wait, I'm not wearing glasses, which is the weirdest fucking fact.
Interesting.
It's funny because I didn't require glasses until I was about 12 when my eyes just suddenly went, I'm fucking done. I'm done trying.
You know, these aren't focusing themselves. Fuck yeah, I'm off to the optician.
Get some glasses, I'm out. That was... So I think even to this day, yeah, I don't know if there's some weird part of me that's like doesn't think I need glasses when I go to sleep.
So do you still have like the thing where like when you realize you're in the dream, you stay in it and you're like lucid?
Yeah, I do, but I don't become
Oh
lucid. That's the weird thing. I've got weird idiot brain where I realize I'm in a dream, but then accept that as part of the logic of the dream, so I don't begin lucid dreaming.
Interesting.
No.
I think I'm this weird cognitive dissonance idiot where I can understand that something is not happening but still accept it as totally happening.
It is funny because I always think of that in regards to like in films and television when people are in their own kind of internal dreams or like whether they're in heaven or something, how they're represented, because like obviously it's like the thing of, oh, when you die and like you go to another plane, like do you just look exactly like you did when you passed away? But then that's like, apart from Beetlejuice, where it's like people have been like ran over and so have like giant tread marks on them and stuff like that. People obviously don't look, well, like that's not quite the thing. But then there are like depictions of it where it's like, oh, I look as I did in my prime, in my 20s or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It'd be really fucking bizarre because I'd hope that if there is an afterlife, you just get to pick and choose. Is like what you thought your best was, you get that.
Yeah, you just get like the heaven character creator.
Yeah, and
just plug it even better.
I imagine you die and you come back and it's like, oh, I'm still like a fat 95-year-old man, which would be impressive, but also like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Well, see, like, I've always had this like thought in the back of my head. Since I was like a teenager of like, well, like what if this whole life that I've lived is a dream and like one day I'm just gonna die and like wake up and like I'm an alien, completely not human at all, and it's all just been like a night and I have to go back to my alien day job or whatever.
I would be so pissed after all the effort I've put in.
I think of it like, well, isn't there like a famous like short story or something about? Well, it's the man who. Was I a man dreaming of being a butterfly, or was I a butterfly?
Oh yeah, there is that famous quote. And there's like a few thought experiments along the lines of, yeah, what if it's all a dream?
Yeah. Man, this is a heady start for bullet
Yeah,
time.
this is a weird start for Trespasser.
Especially considering that if you hadn't gone with your dream story, my backup was I was going to ask you in Chariot, what are your favourite dinosaurs?
I'm glad you didn't ask, because you know what? I didn't have a dinosaur phase as a kid. I just have some boring basic shit like T-Rex, I guess. What's the one with all the spikes along their back? I like them.
Oh, so that's a stego. That was going to be my second choice, but
I mean, like, I also didn't really have a dinosaur phase as a kid. Though, like, a lot of my earliest gaming memories involve dinosaurs, because like the first game I remember playing was Carnivores, the dinosaur hunting game on my old parents' PC, and then I had like a Game Boy game that was all about dinosaurs.
Well, didn't you say that you had Dinotopia on the Game Boy Advance?
It was the Game Boy version of Dinotopia. And I have fond memories of playing that, but like I don't remember anything about the game except for like one level which takes place in a forest. And I think it ends at like a waterfall in like Atlantis or something.
Right.
What?
Quite ambitious for Dinotopia.
Yeah.
I had the PS1 like dinosaurs game, the Disney film.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't remember seeing the film, and I don't think anyone remembers that film, but I had the PS1 game, and I vaguely remember it being interesting.
I never saw the film, but because I did CG in uni, like, I had to do, like, a lot of research into kind of, like, the development of CG, and, like, that was because Disney didn't always own Pixar. Like, that was something that happened in, like, 2005, 2006. So while they were still distributing their films, they, like, internally were like, oh, we're fucking Disney. Why haven't we got our own, like, CG department? Like, we could fucking knock this out of the park. And that film was, like, competing with Spirits Within, where there was this weird kind of like, arms race in CG, where, like, it was less about, oh, can we make a film that's good, and more, who's going to have, like, the more impressive talk at SIGGRAPH, where they go into, like, oh, we were able to employ, like, subsurface scattering and, like, an early form of, like, a Bodo shading and stuff like that. And so, like, the film itself is just kind of more of a tech demo for, hey, look how realistic we can make these dinosaurs look, which is completely undercut by the fact that they all have, like, giant Disney faces. And
also, just Dinosaurs versus Spirits Within is a hell of a crap fight.
I have a funny... funnily enough, one of my lecturers at university as well, one of his, like, colleagues in the... I think at EA, but he was in the film industry before that. He was on the team in Hawaii making Spirits Within. And they were basically told, don't worry, you have another 2 years in the can to work on this. And he was driving into work one day, and there was a billboard that said, coming out Christmas 2001. And he was like, wait, that's a month away.
Oh no!
Yeah, like Square just snuck up on him and said, "Hey, we're not doing financially
I've been transported
well."
2 years back in time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Spirits Within will save us.
Quick, we've got the virtual actress. We'll sell her to another company.
That was the plan. They did want to sell that character to... Because I think it was Gooch. Like, I think it was, like, before he left, that it was, like, Sakaguchi's, like, dream idea for, like, the FF franchise was it's going to be this big multimedia thing of using CG to have films and characters, like, go between different things. But, like, yeah, they just didn't pull it off. Have you actually seen Spirits with it?
I did, yeah. I got it because I was really into Final Fantasy X when I was, like, 9 or fucking 10 or whatever, and I was like, oh my god, there's a Final Fantasy movie. I watched it, and besides the fact my only point of reference for Final Fantasy was 10, I was just watching, like, I don't get it, this is boring, this is garbage, turn it off.
Oh god.
I've never watched it, but, like, I've seen bits and pieces of Spirits Within, you know, just because it's very infamous. Though I did grow up watching Dinosaurs.
I was gonna say, quickly to go back, What would you say is your favorite dinosaur, Jared?
Yeah, so, like, see, like this is gonna show how into dinosaurs I am. It's the guy that, like, kind of has, like, the flat shell back with, like, the big tail that's like a hammer.
Oh, Brontosaurus, I think.
Yeah, you know, I always thought those guys were kind of funny.
Yeah. I like them.
But
okay, so
I don't like them enough to remember their name.
We got our favorite dinosaurs. I got an embarrassing dinosaur fact about myself.
Okay, what's your embarrassing dinosaur fact before I embarrass everyone with my dinosaur fact?
Okay, well, I don't know if we'll be able to top it, but until the age of 20, I thought pterodactyl was said pterodactyl.
Wait, what?
Because it's got a P in the name, like...
But you've never heard ananybody say it. You've only ever seen it
for the
written.
first 20 years of my life, I thought it was pterodactyl until I mentioned it and just got looks and was like... just laughed at and corrected, and I was like... Fuck it. I had to get real defensive. Like, no one's ever said that fucking word to me before.
See, that's because most people have the opposite of, like, they just spell pterodactyl without the P, and people go, oh no, that has a P, it's a silent P in front of it. Yeah, I've never heard of a story of, like, the complete opposite. I've only ever seen it written.
Yeah, no, that's genuinely. See, this is how much of a not dinosaur kid I was. I didn't even cross any other dinosaur kids to talk about it with.
See, I wasn't really much of a dinosaur kid either, despite the fact that the game that we will eventually start talking about, I mean, we're kind of talking around it. I mean, this is important. Yeah. This is a very important conversation that we're having about dinosaurs. Like
We're
I was
laying out our dinosaur history so everyone can know what we're going into Trespasser with.
Yeah.
Right, everyone knows that we're all a bunch of dinosaur fakes.
Yeah, this isn't
but we're the people tasked with reviewing this game.
This isn't the Dino Time podcast where, we cover the video games that, like, time forgot. I don't know, what's a better... Well, how can we punch that up a little
We're a couple billion years late for that podcast.
Yeah, I guess so. No, this is the Bullet Time podcast where we look at the shooters that miss their marks. But, my favourite dinosaur... Because I was having to think about this earlier, because I nearly said Stego, but I've decided I think the guy that I like the most is the Triceratops. They're the ones which have the horns. And
I also like the really long-necked one. Is that like Brontosaurus?
I
can't remember.
Oh, no, wait. Yeah, I think it's... or did I say that the one...
I could have it very wrong. I don't remember them. They're dead. They're dead.
Oh, no, you are right.
Dead.
Brontosaurus is the guy with the long neck. Basically, the guys that they use as cranes in the Flintstones. Those are your guys.
Yeah. See, they're dinosaurs that are pitching in. I like them.
Yeah. I like the dinosaurs in the... I like the pterodactyls in the Flintstones that deliver the mail. I think they're pretty good.
I like any dinosaur that you could easily purpose fit to a human job.
Yeah, no. And especially if they're chatty, I think, as well. Like, that makes me appreciate them more. Like, if they're just kind of like... sort of the earth workers, just like all the cavemen who work in the quarries. What were they actually doing in the Flintstones? Like, I guess was that rock being used just for construction, I guess?
It'd have to be, right? Just dig out the rock you construct with the rock.
Oh yeah, because I guess they lived in rock
everything's
houses.
made out of rocks. They've got rock cars, rock televisions, rock tables. Like,
they need to diversify. They need to get out of just the rock thing.
Well, I was gonna say, because there's probably a reason why we don't live in rocks Sorry, I don't know if that correct. Well, we can't live in a rock anyways. A rock is a solid thing. There's probably the reason that we don't live in caves and stuff anymore is that they're dark and dank and weird. But no one's ever lived in a house made completely out of rocks. Although I guess that's not true. There are stone houses.
There was a woman recently who did spend a year living in a cave without leaving, and she did well. Apparently, there were no major health detriments, and her circadian rhythm adapted pretty quickly. Weird beings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think the thing about living in a cave that would, bother me is just caves are usually where creatures go to rest, and, creatures will make their homes in caves. So, if you go in there, you don't know if you're going to, find a bunch of poisonous snakes or a bear or just something else that you don't want to be meeting.
Yeah, but what if you go in there and it's a family of bats? That's fine. I mean, what are they going to do?
What if you go in there and they ask you to pay rent? Get out.
Oh, shit, that'd be they just start swarming you until you pay up.
I expected to meet a poisonous snake, but not one this bad.
Oh, boom, boom. I was thinking about that earlier, because a pal of ours has gone camping, and they were like, don't get eaten by bears, and it's there's no wild bears in the UK, but I was like, what are the actual dangers of being out in the UK?
You got adders in this country.
Adders is the main one. Although apparently,
I think we do have deers in some regions of the UK, and a deer can fuck you up.
That's true. Yeah, a big enough deer can gouge. Well, I mean, they do have they have horns on their head for gouging.
Yeah,
that's that.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to run afoul of a deer though,
or foul of a. Oh, shit, no, a fowl's a bird, isn't it? So that doesn't even work.
Running afoul of a fowl.
It'd be a fawn of a deer.
A doe deer, female deer, very tropical in the sun. Apparently, bears and wolves are back. They have slowly been reintroducing them though back into the wild. So I don't know. Maybe they could turn up. We don't know.
That's true. Well, and
I don't know why that sounded vaguely sinister, just like a prank. Yeah, we're putting wolves back in the UK. Why? Seems funny.
Yeah, that was my that was my favorite controversial Logan Paul stunt, was when he reintroduced bears and wolves back into the UK countryside for a prank.
Just attached a fucking camera to them. It's right, time for the footage to roll in.
You're Mr. Beast, reintroducing wildlife to areas just to see what happens.
I dropped 10,000 bears into the Scottish Highlands.
Mr. Beast video where he just flies over Australia and just parachutes flora and fauna into the country.
Oh, he just completely destroys the ecosystem of Australia.
It's just all invasive species.
Yeah, they just get overrun by crickets somehow. Oh dear.
I have ran a war against the cane toads. The Australians lost.
Do you think Mr. Beast could win the emu war? Because
In this day and age,
with the power that he has, with the production power that he has, do you think he could win the emu war?
maybe if the Australians couldn't win it, but then I think it's high time the Australians had another go.
Well, yeah, exactly. They got cars now, and Mad. They made Mad Max.
They were doing it with
cars
World War
then
I
too,
machine
though?
guns back then, weren't they? It was
I was about to say, when was because the emu war was in the 30s or 40s, right?
Yeah, so I think they
it's
might
somewhere around then.
Well, think of all the guns they've invented since then,
like an AA-12.
Yeah, or a gun. Well, yeah. They just do the mission from Call of Duty when they're in the AC-30 going over the Australian wilderness.
Nice shot.
Those emus never had to deal with white phosphorus.
Oh yeah, it just
Get
cuts
them now.
It just cuts to Walker looking at all the emus that have been scorched by white phosphorus, and he's like,
But it's
"No, we got to keep
fucking
going."
some KFC chicken.
Yeah, it's like a fucking car. It's like Breath of the Wild. The emus puff into dust and turn into KFC boxes.
I don't know why I'm now just imagining a bunch of Aussies with dragon breath fire shotgun rounds going after emus.
That'd be good.
Well, for one side.
Oh yeah, not for the emu. Well, I mean, I guess maybe we could do the emu war again, but give it back to the emus again. I mean, what did they want in the first place?
I think at this day and age, we could maybe mount some guns on emus and then make it a fair fight.
We could do it like jousts. We could give them laser cannons on the side of them.
I'm saying fair fight like the Australians didn't lose last time.
Oh yeah, but the Australians have since they've made 4 Mad Max films in that time, Snake.
Yeah.
We don't know
Yeah,
what
true.
Do you think emus are the animal alive today that's the most like velociraptors?
Ah, there we go.
That's how we pull it back in. A little bit, yeah. Well, what are the ones called where they're not quite? They have bigger, caribou, whatever, where they have
a caribou
genuine
is a
raptor-style
moose.
claws. Yeah,
Caribous are the deer, I think, or they're related to deer.
They're like reindeer. They're like reindeer.
Yeah, what am I thinking of?
They're in Alaska.
God damn it!
Coffee chain.
It's another kind. Oh, cassowaries. That's what I'm thinking of.
Cassowaries. Oh, fucking yeah. I've heard those guys are monstrous. Fucking cassowaries.
They're terrifying. I had one as a landlord once. Fucking every month, he's like, "Where's my money?" It's like, I set up a direct debit. It's nothing for you to worry about. It will be with you by midday. But
He just wanted to complain. He just had those claws. He needed to use
he
them.
just wanted to use them. Yeah, exactly. He's like, well, if I got them, I just want to use them. That's the thing. So.
When you have claws, every issue looks like Prey.
Yeah, exactly. But not Prey 2006, the game by Human Head. Because instead we're talking about Trespasser, the game from 1997 that was made by DreamWorks Interactive. Before we get into it, though, I should probably introduce the people who are on this podcast. This is a bit of a weird one, though, because we do have a returning guest host, but I think it's kind of... The guest that we have on there will be kind of taking more of a host... They'll be more of the wheel of this one because they've.
I'm just kind of here, to be honest.
Yeah, I think technically I'm the one that has played the most Trespasser because I've played this game twice.
I'm gonna say, Chariot, you've now become the Trespasser expert. You're here for your Trespasser knowledge more than anything. Snake is here because we wanted him on the episode, and also. Well, I guess we'll go into it a little bit, but some of the controls and stuff felt very kind of within your wheelhouse of...
I feel like I picked up this game and got comfortable with it weirdly quickly. But then it could just be I've played an odd amount of jank in my life that I was just like, oh no, this makes sense. Within a level, I wasn't even really registering it as cumbersome in any way, so...
Yeah, well, and I do think, once you get used to the controls, they actually feel relatively intuitive.
And it's also the game is paced for them okay enough. Like, if the game was faster, then, like, oh, this would need to be tightened up. But for the speed you're going at, it's like, I can do everything I need to do. And I felt like every time I died, it's like, oh, I kind of fucked that one up. I could have approached that better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, the one big control issue I do have is with the jumping. Because that did feel
the jumping
a little
feels
inconsistent.
The jumping is that's bad.
Whenever I got to a gap that I had to jump across, I always made a save beforehand. I never wanted to risk that, and that paid off several times across both of my playthroughs.
I messed up a jump a couple times, but mainly I was like, I will say the game doesn't put you in too many life or death jump scenarios.
No.
It's mostly just, like, annoying, like, okay, I'm gonna jump until I eventually go up this ledge.
Yeah, though there is that one section in, I think, the second level when you first encounter the monorail system.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a crane to go up that. And so, you know, being a video game, it looks like the kind of thing that you're supposed to climb. And there's, like, obstacles up there and, like, you know, things that look like a puzzle of, like, oh, you have to move the box here so you can make the jump. But then you get to the end of that, and, like, you know, you realize that, like, climbing and jumping across the broken monorail sections is completely pointless because there's another ramp onto the monorail just, like, right before the end of the level. Yep. And you did not have to go through all the effort.
But you feel cool being up there.
Yeah.
It's all very self-directed fun. Like, that seems to be the... It's the Nintendo issue, the recent Nintendo issue, with people go, well, these games are kind of too easy, and you go, well, if you want to make it harder for yourself, you could make it harder for yourself by doing all this optional stuff, and you go, yeah, but that's not on the golden path, and the golden path's too easy. But this game is kind of like that sort of an extreme of, if you stay on the well, I don't know, like, kind of the golden path is where most of the stuff happens, but the moment that you go off it, the game just completely turns into, like... Well, either there's nothing, or there's, like, kind of too much going on, and you're not really sure how to prepare for it, kind of thing.
There's one whole level where, genuinely, there is what feels like a square half-kilometre of stuff that you don't need to explore whatsoever.
No.
But it's just there, and there's some physics objects, and... It genuinely is a 1997 thing of, it's just impressive to exist in a 3D fucking space. That's...
Is that the harbor level that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the harbor level.
Yeah, no, like I remember my first time through that level, it took ages because I was trying to explore all the buildings, and I think you have to find, like, the key card. You know, there's, like, a whiteboard that says, you know, search the Atlantic or whatever, and there's, like, a shipping container from Atlantic Shipping.
I'm going to be honest, I think because... God, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but this game is so Spartan in some areas that I was always just be able to guess the critical path and what were puzzles just by, oh, that area is relatively built up. I bet that's where I have to go. Mm-hmm. So I just jumped right into the cargo crate. I just platformed on it. I was like, yep, card.
Oh, interesting. Well, like that took me a while to figure out my first playthrough, but then my second playthrough, like that whole section took me, like, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it felt like, wow, like, there's just so much of this level that I did not have to touch. I could just ignore all of those warehouse buildings.
That was kind of exactly it. A lot of it, like, once you know where to go, it's just, you can just bum rush the fucking path and, like, okay. There's the second level as well had, like, a whole field with nothing in it.
Yeah.
Except, like, if you go to a beach, you get a line from the movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's from the second Jurassic Park. It's the scene with the girl who gets, like, eaten by like those, like, little raptor things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... I never found that, but I heard about that, and that blew my mind when I realized
I stumbled on it, and considering I've not seen Jurassic Park, it was totally wasted on me. I was like, I guess this is from the film, so...
I will say, this is the weird, like, it is technically a film tie-in, but it is, like, one of those things where it's like, I think if you like the Jurassic Park films, you probably wouldn't get a lot out of this, apart from
unless you're really into the biography of what's his name, Hammond.
John Hammond's.
John Hammond, right? Yeah.
Well, and like the thing is, like, you know, that's probably what's going to appeal to like Jurassic Park fans the most. But you can just listen to that outside of the game, and like someone even has like a website, I think, where you could just go and listen to all the like John Hammond audio logs in chronological order.
It's been edited
so you don't
like
even
into
have
an
to play
audio
Trespasser to get that.
You could listen to it while playing another game as like a podcast in the background.
Can I introduce the story of this game just to talk about the weirdness of that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're kind of talking about the game now.
Yeah.
Anyway, also, just as a quick correction, 1998's Trespasser.
Okay. I was thinking 1997. I don't know why it is. Just that 1 year makes it slightly less impressive. 97 is mental. 98 is a bit more like, oh yeah, Half-Life existed in that year.
Half-Life did come out in 98, didn't it?
Yeah,
It did.
but
Which like still makes this game look really impressive in a lot of regards, but
Actually, wait. Or have I put in my information wrong? Hold on. I might be doing live editing on this episode.
Okay, well, you do your research, and I'll just say that.
No, sorry, it is 98. Yeah, because this game got delayed a lot, but we'll get into that. But anyways, introduce us to the story of.
So, Jurassic Park Trespasser. This is probably one of the most famous games we're going to cover on this podcast. I think, just in terms of not just in critical reception, but in a more subtle way. Like, this game has a fucking legacy. Mm-hmm. This game is created so much inspiration for future titles and might genuinely be weirdly inspirationally important. Yeah, like this game just created so many mechanics that later games would like take and refine. So anything you think, oh, this game kind of trailblazed, they might have taken it from Trespasser but just did it in a game that was a lot more palatable. But the story of Jurassic Park Trespasser is kind of a sequel to
it's a sequel to The Lost World, and I believe it's set on Isla Nublar, which is aka Site B from The Lost World Jurassic Park.
Okay, and you play as Anne, who is I don't quite know if she intended to go anywhere near the island, but she knows about it because she's in a plane crash, and it's basically a very simple survivor plot. She crash landed on the island, and now it's a survival story to get to a radio and get out. And along the way, she's hearing excerpts from John Hammond's biography, and I think she's hearing them. It's not just like non-diegetic for the player's benefit, because at times she responds to these excerpts explicitly.
Yes, she does.
That's the weird part about it. It's like, is she hearing this? Did she read this? And I was genuinely what's the framing
quip
here?
About like whatever John Hammond is saying but only a couple of times.
Yeah,
and like, you know, it's the kind of thing where like, you know, in a game that had like audio logs like System Shock or something, like that kind of dialogue would make more sense. But you know, this does not explain, you know, where the audio is coming from, and it just raises a lot of very weird questions about like what is going on in her head.
It's funny as well because you're walking through and John Hammond is explaining his history. It's like, I came to London and I had no money, and then I did this, and oh, there was a lovely woman at the gala. But then you go into John Hammond's house at one point, and your bonus for finding like a diskette, a 3.5 like floppy or whatever is, oh, more dialogue that goes more into his history, but it's all very loosely connected. So that's the weird one time it's diegetic.
Yeah. Well, and like that's like the weirdest dialogue in the game, because like I don't even know how that, like, you know, because like the whole diskette has like him talking about a woman who he met at a party and wouldn't answer his calls, like that's the whole disc. And like I don't know how it's supposed to relate to Jurassic Park or like any of this. It's just it's really creepy. Kind of, I was just like kind of creeped out. It's just like, why does John Hammond like have this disc?
I have recorded my thoughts on this woman who has spurned me. Thankfully, I don't have the internet yet, or this would all be public knowledge.
It's very, and I think like because the thing that you kind of mentioned in your beginning, which was like how many games have been kind of either directly or indirectly inspired by this, and like how many games have since come out that have essentially been celebrated for doing stuff that Trespasser did like a decade or even 2 decades beforehand. If you took out all the dinosaurs, which one would make it a very fun game, but it would almost make it a bit like Dear Esther. You know, the game kind of invented the term, quote, the walking simulator, where that is a game that's I say literally, that is about exploring this kind of island, like this sort of, like in the middle of the Baltic Sea kind of space, but it's a guy sort of narrating kind of what he sees and telling poetry. And kind of from that perspective, and I've done as much as I can to sort of research inspirations for the game, but it's one of those things because kind of the story of Trespasser, and we will probably get into it more after what the game is itself. It's more of a story of kind of technology and what did games look like at the time versus what were their inspirations and what were they hoping to kind of achieve with it. But the fact that the entire thing is narrated by John Hammond, and he is this character who, I think he's in the Lost World, but I can't remember, but he is in the original Jurassic Park, and you only kind of see him through the perspective of the characters that interact with him. And so to all the people, to the kids, he's like Walt Disney. To the slightly older archaeologists, he's like this kind of bumbly old man who kind of, should have known better. Then to all the people that he works with, he's he's like a corporate arsehole. But then this is a pure kind of look into his head of, who is John Hammond really? Why did he do this? And the fact that you're listening to his thoughts and his history, well, basically, it's basically kind of like Percy Shelley's Ozymandias. You're walking through his kingdom that has been completely destroyed through his own hubris.
I love that you mentioned Ozymandias, because there is a thing that I don't know if either of you two knew, but this game has a secret ending, and I've got to bring this up now because it's a very weird alternate ending, and me mentioning it doesn't really spoil anything, but you mentioning Ozymandias is hilarious because, so, on the final, I think it's not a ladder, but when you're going up a lift, you go up a lift to the final area of the game. Yeah. If you turn and you do a flying jump, there is invisible geometry which you can land on.
What?
And then if you follow this invisible geometry left and then right and walk out over the cliff, you get dropped in the final boss arena, and Hammond reads the passage from Ozymandias, and then the game just ends.
Oh my god!
What?
It is a bizarre alternate ending.
Did you discover this, or did
I saw a video online when I was doing my own research, which is mainly James. I think focuses more on development. I focus more on Easter eggs.
Yeah,
and weird odds and ends in the game. But it doesn't really add anything to the ending. It's just that really just makes me question if that can count as an alternate ending or just the oddest Easter egg.
Is that the intent? Is that the intentional ending that they were? That's what they wanted the players to really discover. No, that's the question. But that is funny though. That is funny when it's it's Ozymandias, and it's we literally found an ending where he just reads the Percy Shelley poem, and it's okay, I got what they were
If you do this incredibly obtuse jump, we will spell out the message of the game for you.
Hey, if you know how to, if you know how to no-clip the game, we're just going to literally explain the theme of Jurassic Park Trespasser to you. And again,
it turns out the message was in the skybox. It was hidden.
And speaking of games that have obviously gone come afterwards and taken inspiration from it, because this does very much show its existence to System Shock, not literally just as the developers who worked on this game originally came from Looking Glass anyways and worked on System Shock, but System Shock is still very much a kind of a pulpy thing of, oh, the computer's gone crazy, go turn off the computer. But then, it's kind of with System Shock 2 where they get a little bit more heady with it and more about kind of it's religion, it's this and that. And then by the time you get to BioShock, where it's the funniest opening of video games, where a guy literally has cut a PowerPoint presentation to tell you how fucking sick his ideology is. And he basically says, yeah, like literally libertarianism is bulletproof, and the moment you get out, this city is turned to shit. Like it's like how can you not have like a funnier thing of, oh yeah, this is gonna work absolutely fine, and then you get out and it's just like full of mutants and full of water, and it's like good intro. But like,
I like John Hammond more than I like that guy though.
John
Hammond just wanted to bring the dinosaurs back, and you know what? Fair play.
Hammond was a bamper, and he mostly wanted to bring the dinos back just because he thought, why not? I'm a scientist. Why not?
He didn't bring back the dinos as some part of his Randian philosophy. He was just like, fucking dinosaurs, man.
He was like, science.
He was the dinosaur kid.
Yeah, he was
the ultimate dinosaur.
He was literally the ultimate. That was what actually. If Jurassic Park 1 hadn't gone horribly wrong, that would have been his picture on Time magazine, and underneath saying the ultimate dinosaur kid, man of the year. Oh god. But yeah, I mean, well, that's obviously the theme of Jurassic Park is like, why did you do it? Oh, because we're scientists and we could. And it's like, but was that really a good idea though? And then Dennis Nedry doesn't turn the security gates on and it all goes tits up. So it's mostly just, it's less about the dinosaurs are a problem, more just mismanagement. That's the story of
The real message of Jurassic Park is, make sure your security guards know what they're doing.
Yeah. So
wasn't it a thing where like Nedry had like financial trouble, so he was bribed to like
I believe the story is
the embryos.
Yeah, like he got paid off to basically just pull out the embryos. I also think that the park going because the park's kind of precarious anyways, but then everything going horribly wrong is kind of like, I think it is set off by somebody, but I can't totally remember. I probably should have rewatched Jurassic Park before this podcast. It's one of those films that you see and you just go, oh, I don't need to rewatch it. I know what that film's about. Dinosaur theme park, and then it goes wrong. That's the film. There we go.
I didn't do my due diligence because I rewatched Die Hard for the Die Hard, but
I rewatched all the Die Hards for Vendetta.
Oh, there you go.
Oh wow,
you put all the movies in.
Yeah. Well, I watched all the Die Hards that came out before Die Hard Vendetta.
Yeah, fair enough.
I didn't have the stomach for Die Hard 4.0 brackets Live Free or Die Hard, nor did I have it for, I can't even remember what the fifth one, A Good Day to Die Hard, I think.
It's funny when you put, I'm sorry to talk about Die Hard more, but you get Die Hard and it makes sense, but then when you put it at the end of a sentence, it does sound like Die Erect.
live Free or Die Rex.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's pretty good. We talked about the story of Jurassic Park Trespasser, and you might be going, oh, okay, well, that sounds pretty simple. So it's just like, and it's like Dear Esther, so you're just on an island and you walk about. Like, I've played a video game. I've played thousands of video games that like that. That isn't really the full story of Jurassic Park Trespasser, though, because gameplay is one of those things that's quite difficult to convey in an audio-only podcast, because you can't really see visuals of like how things work. But Trespasser is, and I guess we kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the episode, talking about platforming puzzles, something that FPS games were playing around with at the time, like Turok had that, but everything in the Doom mode is very kind of solid, which I know that sounds weird, but then that makes more sense when I say that where Doom is solid, Trespasser is very wobbly. It's a game that, when I think of Trespasser in my head, it is a wobbly game.
I can see what you mean. I know it's hard to convey in gameplay, but we can ask our audience, those without aphantasia anyway, to, I think we can explain the gameplay to this, so alright. Yeah. Imagine a keyboard and mouse in your head. Just hold every single key in your head. I know that sounds mental, but do it. Now, every key I tell you about, you have to hold, just visualize it as red. If you weren't doing that already, alright? So, W, A, D, and X is to move.
Yeah.
S is to walk forward slowly. So just remember, S stands for slowly.
S stands for slow walk.
Yeah.
Well, W stands for walk.
So already I had to fight my muscle memory so often when backtracking, like when a dinosaur was approaching me and I'm like holding down S and walking towards the fucker. Like, no, go back! But then, alright, so how about you want to fight a dinosaur? So, to fight a dinosaur, first you click and hold down the left mouse button. This brings out your noodle arm.
Yes.
Yes.
And now the game has soft aiming, and moving the left mouse stick no longer looks around. The left mouse stick? The left mouse... What the fuck am I saying? The mouse! The mouse just fucking moves your arm and you're fucking aiming. So, and then you can press right-click to pick stuff up.
Yes.
And then you can hold down Shift to line up a gun's sights.
Yep.
While still moving the mouse. Holding down Shift changes your orientation while holding an item. And then spacebar shoots. You can still move while doing this. And it's funny, because that might sound cumbersome, but I think after 20 minutes it clicks. It's not great, but it works pretty okay.
Yeah.
The
thing that I think... I think, it's a bit clunky, but I also think that's kind of what makes this game interesting. And, it's one of actually, I think, the better qualities about the game.
It's going to sound weird. It's kind of like either tank controls or the Resident Evil thing where you are naturally a little bit encumbered, which makes the combat kind of have its tension and its danger.
Yes. Yeah. If it had the traditional FPS thing that everyone else did at the time, where you just have your crosshair at the center of the screen and you just shoot your bullet from the center, this would be a very boring game.
You would just mow down dinosaurs. There would be no threat. They wouldn't be scary whatsoever.
But with the arm combat, it's lining up shots is actually really tense. And even, as I got used to the controls, it still felt like there was always a chance I could miss. And every single battle kind of always has the possibility of going poorly for you if you mess up.
And that's the thing, you kind of feel like you're dead 5-10 seconds before it happens because your weapon is a physical object. This is the thing about Trespasser that's, part of the innovation is for a 98 game. Everything is a fucking physics object except the world. The dinosaurs are rigged fucking ragdolls that are kind of animating and being puppeted. If a dinosaur gets into your space, your gun is just shoved out of the way.
Yep.
It's fucking terrifying. It's really good.
And then your only chance of survival is to scramble to grab your gun or maybe pull out a backup and try to desperately shoot it in the head. And that's really frantic.
Oh yeah.
And I can't think of any other game with shooting that feels quite like that or inspires those kinds of really tense scrambling for your gun feelings.
Apart from VR stuff, I would say.
Yeah.
That, there's no... Because I think that's the big thing to kind of to sell to kind of the people at home who are kind of trying to imagine this is the fact that pretty much every game that we've covered on Bullet Time so far has been the gun. The gun is the center of the screen. The gun is how you interact with everything. You may press E to open a door, but you don't really see a character's hand reach out and touch a button to do that. Basically the gun speaks, and that is how everything works. Whereas with this, it's there are guns in the game, but the way that you mainly interact with the world is via a hand, which is connected to a physical arm. And so combat is kind of weighted equally as much as puzzle solving, and there is platforming in this game, but there's also platform building, which is very interesting.
There's a lot of box puzzles.
Yeah, there's a lot of box puzzles in this game, which there is an unfortunate reason for that, but it's very interesting just from a kind of a point of view of they didn't really want this to be an FPS game, for initial it feels in its heart it's not an FPS game, but because it's a first person perspective and because it's you need to onboard people into this kind of weird I say weird, into this unique control scheme that it has. Shooting is kind of a very easy way to get people up to speed on that. And which is why, because I was saying this to Chariot yesterday, and still in my heart is kind of what I think this game is, which is that it's not really an FPS adventure set in the world of Jurassic Park, but it's it's training software for, hey, you've ended up on Jurassic Park. What do you... Here's some scenarios of what to do. kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and like, you know, kind of thinking about that, like I think the whole ARM thing kind of speaks to like the developers, like what they hoped to achieve with this. And I think like this is like very much like in the 90s, you know, computer software is progressing. You know, we've got 3D games now. You know, it feels like technology is moving at a rapid pace. And I think when that starts happening, like the whole notion of realism, you know, people want a game that is like real life. Yes. It's like, when are we going to get the game that feels like doing stuff in real life? And I feel like the ARM is kind of like an attempt to do that, where it's like, oh, well, in real life, you don't like have a crosshair in the center of your screen. Like, you have an arm and you have to use it to like actually pick up the gun, and it's a physical thing in your hand and you have to rotate it around. And, you know, that's the way you interact with literally everything in this game.
Yep.
You know, just like how in real life you have to put in, you know, the keypad, you know, combination to like, you know, get into your like building or whatever.
Right.
You have to
which
literally
has giant keys.
You have to physically punch in the codes.
Yeah.
in Trespasser, and it's one of the most challenging things you'll ever do.
It was earlier today when I had to put my card into the machine and punch in my fucking code, and I was like, man, I'm getting real Trespasser vibes.
Your arm just suddenly went numb, and you were like slapping it against it as you were then, and your finger ran across all the buttons and hit them all at once, kind of thing.
Like, and then the guy behind the bar said, "Sir, I think you've had enough."
He's gone Trespasser, kick him out.
He's gone Trespasser, get him, boys.
And then a bunch of wobbly velociraptors come out.
I mean, I guess
that's kind of the nice thing about this game, is that because everything is driven by IKs and like kind of generative animation, is that the dinosaurs are also kind of as awkward as you are, so like everything is very much on an even playing field.
Yeah, you can kind of, it was one of those things where, because the game has such a slow pace, and I started feeling bad when I kind of realized if I jumped at the correct rhythm, I can go faster, and I just started matadoring the fucking wobbly dinosaurs, and I was like, man, I am bringing fucking 2010 and beyond tech into this 97 game, and it's not fair to any of the dinosaurs involved.
Yeah. Well, like, I think the jumping on, like, you know, the version we played, on, like, modern hardware, I think the jumping is more reliable. Because, you know, playing it... So the first time I played this game, I played it on a virtual machine on Windows XP. And, you know, it was, like, kind of, like, original-ish settings with no patches or, like, anything like that. And the jumping felt way more inconsistent, where there would be times where I would press the button and I would just not jump, which never really happened to me in, you know, the Windows 10 version we played.
Yeah, I think I got a slightly luxurious experience on a patched Windows 10 edition where everything just kind of worked.
Yeah. Though, like, that could just be my brain, like, misremembering things, or maybe I just like naturally got better. It is hard to say. I would have to boot up the game again in the virtual machine to really know.
I would say the big issue, well, I say an issue, we'll say the weirdest thing about this game is that if we had done this episode like after playing it for maybe 10 minutes, we would have a completely different opinion about it, because it is like, I know that like there's a lot of games that you can say, oh, the more you play it, the better you get at it, but it's like the majority of FPS games that we play on this, because they all kind of have a natural ancestor in Doom, if you're very good at, say, Call of Duty, then chances are you're also going to be very good at Doom and all the kind of games that are in between, because it's, again, very solid and locked down. The gun talks, is WASD movement, and it's the same kind of acceleration all the way through. Whereas, like, playing Trespasser does genuinely feel like you're building the muscle in like a different part of your brain, for like lack of a better word. Like it's a new skill that you develop, which I think if you're used to VR stuff, maybe you'd be better at it, but then you don't have the binocular kind of, you can't gauge depth the way that you can in VR, which would probably make it a lot easier.
I will say, yeah, because I think part of why I was asked on was like, because I play a lot of VR stuff, and it's like, okay, Snake Nose VR would be a bit. I will say, playing this game, it is a very modern perspective looking back, but there are times playing it where my brain just kind of compartmentalized it as, this feels like playing a VR game that's been backported into a flat game, which is very bizarre a way to approach it. It's like a very, not thinking of it as a game from 97 approach where I know what it is, so I don't really want to belabor that point, but that is like a very easy way to weigh it up if you come from playing like fucking H3VR or Vertigo or whatever. It's just, you only have one arm, they couldn't program a second arm, it was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's the magic of VR stuff where they go, well, you are the person who is inhabiting the world, so your hand isn't a gun, that's stupid, but your hand can pick up a gun and you can pull a trigger and it, fires off shots like you would imagine. And they're trying to essentially recreate that here. But
well, and that's always how I explain this game to people who haven't seen anything about it, is, I think people, if you tell them, oh, it's kind of like a VR game where like you have your hand and you rotate the gun, I think that kind of skips a lot of the complicated explanation and gets to like, the core of like what makes Trespasser so different from like every other first-person shooter.
Oh, 100%.
But, well, and like, they kind of go into like the whole like, this feels so different from like your Call of Duties and Dooms because like, it's building off of a very different like ancestor. Like, the way I kind of like describe this game overall is it's kind of like an evolutionary dead end of like the first-person shooter genre. I
agree. Maybe in totality, but in a lot of little ways, it's kind of like a carcass that has been picked from.
Yeah. Well, like how the Velociraptor did not continue as the Velociraptor, but eventually it emerges as birds, and then eventually, someone finds a mosquito in amber, they drill it out, and then they turn the blood into VR shooters. And revive the dinosaur essentially.
It's kind of like a brassica, as in like you get broccoli from it, but you also get cauliflower from it, and you get like all these other kind of brassic vegetables from it. But like the developers who like basically like kind of Trespasser is this weird sacrificial lamb in regards to it tried to change everything like on its first attempts, and I mean, we'll kind of get. I mean, I'll go into sort of in a minute why like it doesn't quite. It unfortunately missed its mark, but like every game that has since come after it, again, either directly or indirectly, took a bit of the brassica, like it took the broccoli part of it or the cauliflower part of it, and put it in their game and like completely reap the benefits of doing so. Half-Life comes out the same year, and I think they're probably looking at how Trespasser is developing. But again, as you said, Chariot, like this is 98, so this is 2 years after the first 3D accelerator cards are introduced to PCs. Like the 2 years after Quake comes out. So we are very much now technological arms race for how games are developing. And things are moving towards physics. Like physics is like we've had games before where you can knock boxes over and stuff like that. Like that's not particularly impressive. But simulation is, like, completely taking out of the developer or the kind of creator's hand. Not all boxes are going to fall over the same every single time. We're going to add, like, an element of randomness to it. And Half-Life, for the most part, is a very conventional FPS game, but it does two things incredibly well. One is, it is essentially a very well-paced kind of action story, where they're able to kind of pull all these set pieces together and it escalates in a really nice... Like, it becomes the template for, say, Call of Duty and Medal of Honor, where you get this kind of natural escalation as it goes along, and you feel like, even though it's essentially a roller coaster... I mean, the game literally begins with you on a train, and it's like in miniature what the rest of the game is, which is you are on a train being ferried from set piece to set piece, but you never feel like that is the case. But the second thing is physics, and like they're able to do things like... stacking boxes to solve certain puzzles and, moving cables and stuff like that. And then come Half-Life 2, that has then fully developed into full-on weight puzzles and kind of fabric simulation and stuff like that. And
stuff has like buoyancy. There's like that puzzle with like the big barrels that you have
where you use them to prop up a ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because the rest of the game is still like Half-Life, those things stand out more and are more kind of impressive as a result. But Jurassic Park Trespasser kind of had that stuff. It didn't have buoyancy or whatever, because you never really get to large bodies of water, but it has that kind of want for you to monkey around with the environment in order to kind of open a path forward. Like it's funny, like in Trespasser, just the act of opening a door feels not more impressive, but like more interesting than just pressing an E button to just cause the door to open, which is such a weird thing to consider in a game. But then, as has been said, it's not a fast-paced, it's not Doom, it's not like this fast-paced action game. It's more like this kind of slow burn survival horror, where even the kind of the smallest of actions you're doing are given like way more weight, because the idea is that you are fully embodying this character, who, we haven't mentioned this yet, but because this game has no... Okay, here's another thing. This game has no, no user interface widgets.
Yeah.
And when I say
There's no
widgets...
little picture of Anne's face in the bottom right corner with, like, a Doom guy, where she's smiling one, then looks bloody to fuck when she gets bitten.
There's no number that says how much health that Anne has left. Like, the developers, very much wanted to move away from any kind of, quote, gamey elements for this. So you go, well, how do you know how healthy you are? Like, is there a black vignette around the screen that grows darker? Does Anne... Because Anne, whenever you pick up a weapon, she tells you how many bullets are in the weapon. And then we'll say whether a clip is empty or anything like that, which, again, since then, we've come up with better ways to do that.
It was used in King Kong,
King Kong is literally...
the movie.
King Kong is literally that. They got... literally Adrian Brody off winning an Oscar for The Pianist. They got him in a booth to say, 4 shots left.
I got 8 rounds.
3 shots. Oh, I'm hurt. I was going to say that a recent game that does it really well is Amnesia the Bunker, where you only have one weapon, which is a revolver, and in order to check how much ammo you have, you literally have to push out the chamber to see how many bullets are in there. But not only that, but you have to check as well because the casings are left over. So you also have to check if there's...
so you have to look the front.
Yeah, so you have to check if there's spent casings in there and replace them properly. Which, again...
That kind of reminds me of Receiver. And also that was a feature in Condemned. That's also a feature in Condemned.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I didn't know that was in Condemned.
In the first game, I remember it, though. I think it was a bit more gamey than that, and you could take the mag out, and then you would get a display that actually numerically just told you, here's how many rounds you have.
That's not bad, though.
It's just a bit more... It's a bit more streamlined and player-facing.
And again, if maybe Trespasser was a bigger success, we may have seen that kind of evolution happen more quickly, kind of as SPS games went on. But what do you do about your health? How do you check how healthy you are in Trespasser? Well, fortunately, Anne is a very buxom lady and also is a fan of having a tattoo. So when you want to check how healthy you are, you'll have a look down at your ample bosoms, and one of them has a heart tattoo on it. And the more the heart tattoo is filled in, like it's a fucking... Like it's a SNES Spider-Man game, the more the heart's filled in, the more you're gonna get hit, kind of thing. And then when the tattoo is completely filled in, that is when Anne is dead, unfortunately. But when Anne heals up, which kind of happens, you do slowly recover health.
Yeah, you have regenerating health.
Before Halo.
Just explaining that you have health, that is 3 back-to-back novel features for the time.
Yeah, it's really weird describing this game and having to pause at every point to go, oh yeah, games before that, some games had experimented with this, but this was the game that kind of brought it to the forefront. Yeah, this had regenerating health before Halo. The map itself is very evocative of kind of Halo, but more so what Far Cry would do, where it is...
Yeah.
Well, it's not just the fact that it's regenerating health, it's a diegetic UI as well.
Yeah.
And it's like a player model body, which granted, it's funny as well you mention how ample she is. She was made such to just kind of disguise the fact that you don't have legs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't really put that together. But she is so busty so you don't have to see her feet. I didn't think of that.
So you are just a floating boob room, but with one arm.
Well, and like I think this is one of the things like if people know one thing about Trespasser, I think it is the whole boob tattoo thing. Because I've mentioned this to some people, and like, you know, I've had several people be like, "Oh, is that the game with like the boob health tattoo?" So I think this one feature is like
that has transcended the game. That has secured its pop cultural legacy. Is none of the innovative features or the physics, or even it being like a critically panned game. It's
or even the fact it's a Jurassic Park game, a franchise which was pretty big at the time and still pretty relatively popular since.
Even though it's critically been run into the ground nowadays. But
sure.
Yeah. I mean, name a big franchise from that time that hasn't been critically run into the ground, but you know.
No, true.
Not to
and it's funny because
like
a
sad boy.
Yeah, we were talking about like, oh, what games have like since come and done that, and I was thinking about this in regards to like RE7, and it's like something they didn't even bring back in 8, which I think is so bizarre. But like that too wanted to kind of do the diegetic user interface, no on-screen widgets thing. Like, it gives you one for ammo count, because I think it's like you're shooting so often in that game, it's kind of like you have to have it. But it does the old Resident Evil thing of, like, in RE1, you had to jump into a menu to see how healthy your characters were. But in this, it's like, you pull up a watch, and it has an ECG on it, and it shows you, literally just shows you how healthy you are, like, by what your heart rate looks like, which is like...
I think...
Cool.
The most famous example I can think in recent years, inverted fucking commas, of like diegetic health pop-ups is Dead Space, where it's
literally they could create a science fiction setting completely from scratch. So, hey, how about this power armor that they wear? It's a literal power beam up their spinal cord. Yeah, it's fun. It is fantastic. Like, and that game as well can also have like. You can do the split screen thing of you can see cutscenes of other people talking, but it's literally floating holograms, and like the map is a hologram, and like the menu's a hologram. So like it is like it's so like cleverly done. And again, not to say that Trespasser walks of all these games could run, but it is a thing of like, well, how much like because this game was doing something so different. Because again, 1998 Half-Life comes out, which is kind of like the mirror of this, where Half-Life is Half-Life is celebrated for being this kind of subversive thing, but when you kind of look back at, well, and I say maybe this is kind of one of those things of like, what every game that has since come out after it, of course it seems conventional because every game that you've played since has taken stuff from Half-Life, but I even think it's like it doesn't massively deviate too much from what Quake was doing. And Quake itself wasn't massively deviating away from what Doom was doing. It was like a thing of, once they had figured out what was successful in FPS games, they very much stuck to it. But changed the variables and changed the visuals wherever they could to tailor it more to like whatever story or whatever tone they were going for. Whereas this was just something that they completely built from the ground up to be as subversive as possible.
Yeah, well, and like I do sometimes think about like the innovation of Trespasser, and like I do wonder how actually influential it was. Yeah, like I don't know how many of the people, you know, from like later games that have like features that Trespasser had. I don't know how many of them played Trespasser or were like thinking about Trespasser when they were designing those games. You know, like maybe it's a thing where like these are kind of ideas that someone would have eventually kind of independently from Trespasser, or was it a thing where like Trespasser was instrumental for like them kind of having that idea or learning how to do it better?
No, it's like the invention of radar. Like it happened in three different places around the same time, and like they all came from it from completely different points. Like you can't say that one was really inspired by the other. And I think games development is very much that, and also something that I haven't really touched on with this, and kind of something that I have to consider with like a lot of the FPS games that we've covered is that, well, especially in the series is that we like Raven Suffer especially is like, a lot of FPS design, a lot of game design is iterative in regards to, like, id made their games alongside developing their engines. So whatever they added to, like, Doom 2 or to Doom 3 or whatever, that was then a new tool in the arsenal for other people to use. So that's why we had games for a while that had, like, better lighting or better physics and stuff like that, because essentially somebody had to break that ground and turn it into something that could be then used by other people. Whereas Trespasser, like, literally, this was made by, like, a single developer with... I will get into the history of it in a second, because it does have a very kind of... It does tie into some interesting kind of early PC development stuff, but... like, nobody after Trespasser said, oh, well, you have a good engine, so we'll license it and we'll, like, polish it up. No, like, everything that was in Trespasser was bespoke, made for purpose for this one game. And then, because it wasn't a success, it didn't really, like, get... Certainly not by other developers.
Were made from it.
Yeah,
There
nothing...
was no
yeah, it didn't become the brass
spin-off.
Yeah. However, obviously... The reason that we have been able to play this game since is because the fan community around it it is quite a spectacular thing. But, like, I just so I'll tell you a little bit about the history of how this game was made. Well, I guess, I don't know, we'll have to go through some weird tangents for this, but, like, this is the one thing that I've, like, been really excited to talk about with, like, Jurassic Park Trespass, because the game itself is neat, I will say. But I think it's one of those things that would I recommend it to people who listen to Bullet Time? Well, I guess if people are listening to Bullet Time, they're already kind of FPS.
You know what? We've talked about how the gameplay feels. Let me just say what you're doing in this game for Zai. Like, it's mostly wandering around very big stages, which would have been impressive for 98.
Yes.
Like, you start at point A, you don't know where point B is, figure it out. And in between you are dinos and guns. And oh yeah, you never reload the guns because you've only got one. You've only got the one new one.
It's only whatever clips they have.
Yeah. So you've got to change weapons out, and that adds to a lot of attention when you first play. It's like, oh, when am I next going to get a gun? I've only got like 8 bullets to defend myself, and dinos are hard to hit, and they go down in like 4, maybe 1 if you get a lucky headshot on like a Type A fucking raptor or whatever. And then you do box stacking puzzles where you pick up boxes and you put them into place, or you have to throw rocks. Oh yeah, there's a throw button.
Yeah, there's a throw button.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like physics puzzles and seesaws in between you and where you need to go. And sometimes there's like ancient ruins. You know actually what my proudest moment in this game was? I really should have grabbed a clip of it to send to you two, but you know the, like, ancient stairway temple thing?
The Crash Bandicoot part,
Yeah, the Crash Bandicoot level, where, like, you're walking up a stair and then, like, a face will just, like, collapse out of the bedrock and fall towards you. I just had a gun, which was empty, and the fucking face fell, and I just threw my gun at it, and it just stopped it fucking dead.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh.
I was like,
nice.
shit, it's coming for me. Throw my gun, and it, like, blocks the fucking trap, and I was like, yeah. That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen, but that was awesome.
See, like, I can imagine that, like you threw an AK or something, and it does that thing that, like, it wedges itself, like, between the ground and the rock, just kind of stopping it in place like a big wedge kind of thing.
Oh, that would have been good. But the physics and the friction and the weight of objects in this game are absolutely bizarre. I don't know how weight values in this game work. Basketballs don't bounce, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how many objects have bespoke, like, physics interactions for, like, wood doesn't necessarily act differently than rubber, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and, like, you know, some of the physics, and, you know, one of the weirdest physics interactions I had was actually kind of, like, also related to, like, that temple place, but a bit later in, like, you know, the ruins where you fight, like, the velociraptors.
Yeah.
And there's one velociraptor where, you know, I didn't even know you could knock over some of those walls, but as it was running towards me, its tail hit one of the walls and knocked it over. And then, like, the whole wall didn't even fall on the Velociraptor. It just lightly nicked its tail, and it died instantly.
Oh, God.
You
saw that when I was streaming the game to you. The one time I got, like, a melee weapon kill besides the mace was just, like, I ran in with a melee weapon, which, by the way, does exist, but they are completely unreliable, swung like mad, and it was like, oh, the dino died. And it was just like, didn't expect that. Just...
Yeah, well, and I think also, about that melee weapon, it's a giant mace.
Yep.
Yeah, so you, in Nedry's office, you can get a really cool mace. But unfortunately, it comes right at the end of the level, so you can't even, do much with it, because I think there's, one dinosaur left.
There is, only one dinosaur left to use the one melee weapon in the game on, and the game takes your weapons away between loading screens.
Yes, which is, if I could go back and say, hey, here's some not to do. I would have the Resident Evil inventory in this game, just a traveling, a box that appears between levels that you can put weapons.
That's something I wanted to bring up in this game's list of innovations, and accidental innovation is a 2-weapon limit, even though it's more like a 2-item limit, because
anything that can be in your hand limit, I guess.
Yeah, which is part of how keycard puzzles work. Is I've got to give up half of my available inventory to ferry this object to where it needs to go.
And it's funny because, again, in regards to this game being kind of this awkward innovator, it's in Halo where you completely understand why it's there, because it's literally, you don't want players to pause the game to bring up a list of 1,000 weapons. You just want them to quickly switch to something. But by having that limit in place, it also encourages the experimentation of, pistol, I'm more likely to find ammo for that, but I really want this rocket launcher, but then I always have my reliable assault rifle in case, that doesn't quite work out. So again, but versus this where it's kind of why does this have a 2-weapon limit? And it was probably from a thing of, oh, well, you're a human being. You can literally only carry 2 weapons. They probably just said, they can only, a human being only has the physical strength to carry 2 weapons at once.
But she's handling a Spaz 12 one-handed. That's fine.
Oh, Jesus, we haven't even explained. Oh, yeah. Actually, can we, because I was literally going to be, the way I was going to segue was going to be because we talked about the story, but what you actually do level by level is very kind of, there's not really, when you boil it down, you don't really do much.
No, you just kind of wander between points of interaction, which are usually there's a bunch of boxes in that direction. I probably need to go there and figure something out.
Yeah, and I think...
well, and the levels here are huge. It should be noted that again, along the lines of we want a realistic-ish game, the levels are not scaled down to match your movement speed.
No.
So a lot of your playtime is just going to be holding down the W key, slowly walking towards where you need to go.
Yep.
And patch 1.1 upped your movement speed. I don't know if we had patch 1.1 on what we were playing, so we might have had the original movement speed.
No, I remember playing... I did what Chariot did initially, where I also played it on a VM, and no, it is genuinely slower without the patch.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think that might be why maybe the jumping was a lot more unreliable, is, you carry less momentum into your jump because you move slower overall.
But it is again, of all the games that we have played for Bullet Time, this is the one that is, quote, the least like a video game in that, you go into the arena and there's 15 imps and, or it's Black, where it's literally just shooting corridors non-stop. You see an enemy maybe once every...
don't feel conducive to gameplay. It's this is
no.
a field.
You see an enemy once every 5 or 10 minutes in Trespasser, and an enemy singular. You sometimes get multiple raptors, but but that is treated like an event.
And it kind of is with these controls.
With these controls, it is.
Yeah.
One of the final arenas of the game is 4 raptors, and it's a fucking challenge. It's,
oh my gosh, God. Yeah. Well, I was playing that last night, and even I had gone through the rest of the game, only dying once or twice to velociraptors. But then also it should be noted that in that final arena, this is right at the start of the level, after you've lost your weapons from the previous. So you have to scramble to grab your guns before the 4 velociraptors are on top of you, right at the start of that level.
With your movement speed as well, is like we kind of mentioned guns getting pushed out of the way. It means run in the dinosaur's direction, grab a gun before they get in, back up enough to aim at it, and hope you didn't get flanked, because this is like a mazy arena of buildings, and like, hey, there's dinosaurs in all directions. It's a mean final arena. It comes for you.
Yeah. Well, and like also like on like the subject of like the 2-weapon limit, I think one of the really interesting things about like the combat is also just like, this is like kind of a survival horror game, but like there are guns everywhere, but at any given time you only have access to like a couple of guns, and even just throwing 2 dinosaurs at you could be enough to empty maybe 1.5 of your guns as ammo.
Yeah, you
so,
are
like,
constantly
it makes
cycling.
every fight, you can't stock up on 1 million guns like you can in other shooters, which I appreciate, but also makes it a bit more tedious when you have to run back and forth to like grab a gun that you saw like a couple of minutes back.
Genuinely, if you think, okay, I'll remember that, and you think, I'm going to go back for it, it could be that long. It could just be a trek.
And it's funny because it is like, I did try and look up like what did they say the genre for this game was, and again, it's action adventure, which is like that's the vanilla ice cream of genres. That's like, oh, any game could be an action adventure sort of thing. But like, this does have like that kind of survival horror energy to it, where like, again, the developers didn't take inspiration from it, but you can kind of see a weird line between, say, Trespasser and maybe Amnesia. And Amnesia then obviously inspires Alien Isolation and eventually RE7, where it is first-person combat against like a singular or like it's you in first person against like a singular foe. And like the thing that like all video game developers want to have is like, oh, we want like the clash between you and that one character to be as amazing as, say, like you trying to fight like 100 guys in Doom or something like that. And whereas like kind of Amnesia has to achieve that through just your character is kind of slow and but it still does feel very conventionally FPS. Everything in this is just a challenge because you're wobbly. You're just the wobbliest person ever designed.
And you've got to line up the fucking iron sights by holding down left mouse and shift.
Yes.
And
yes.
And then hitting space.
It is funny as well, and then also whenever you move, your gun, as James says, you are wobbly, so your gun just errors off massively, and then you've got to stop and wait for the alignment to kind of go center again.
Yeah, well, and like I do like I almost kind of read like the clumsiness and floppiness of the weapons as like, almost kind of like a story thing, because Anne is not a trained soldier, which alone is actually kind of interesting among like first person shooters from. Well, I mean, I guess like not everyone was like a trained combat person, but a lot of other first-person shooters had.
You didn't have too many just kind of action survivor protagonists.
Yeah,
back then.
No, and
like,
this is also not to like maybe give this game props where maybe it wasn't intentional, but like Tomb Raider came out maybe the year or 2 years before, and this is like another game led by a female protagonist who is like in an action lead, which is kind of impressive for the time as well.
It's
like this
funny,
is something I actually wrote down in my notes. I was legitimately trying to think of other first-person shooter games that had female leads, and like genuinely like
No One Lives Forever, I guess.
Had like Perfect Dark, No One Lives Forever.
What was the name of that? The girl from Army Men, and also a series called Army Men.
Why is your poll out? Oh yeah,
that's my fault. That's my
Army
poll.
Men is a bullet. That'll be on bullet time at some point. I think that's a franchise I've forgotten. So
I remember Army Men. I played the PS1 games. I didn't play the PC strategy games, which are the more famous branch of the Army Men series. But I remember like the main character had a love
Sarge's
interest,
War or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, Sarge's Heroes was the earlier one on like the N64 and PS2, PS1 and that, but there was a female love interest and she had a spin-off game. No idea if it was good.
Do you know if it's an FPS though?
I don't think it is. I think
no, it's probably like a third. It's probably like a Banjo-Kazooie.
I mean, they
game
were all third-person shooters, so
yeah.
We've done a third-person shooter, though.
Yeah, but, like, the point is, you know, this is yet another way in which Jurassic Park Trespasser is actually, like, really ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. Well, and I think also, you know, going back to why I just initially mentioned this is, like, yeah, she's just a random civilian. In fact, like, I think, like, the first time she picks up a gun, she says, "Oh, this is heavier than I expected."
The first time you fire a shotgun, she goes, "So that's how it feels," which is still impressive considering she fired that fucker one-handed.
Yeah, she one-hands she's like BJ Blazkowicz. She can one-hand You never see her left arm the entirety of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I beat this game one-handed. Anyone who's beaten the game can claim that.
That's true.
You know what's funny as well? Because this game is a cult game, you know, cult fandom, whatever. I did read somewhere that, like, fans of the game just kind of rationalize that as she broke her other arm in the crash. And I like I love headcanoning. This is why she has one arm.
You know what's funny? Because I was headcanoning because we were talking about this when Chariot was playing this the other day in regards to the stuff in this that feels overly gamey being kind of like it does. Because again, the magic of this game is when you feel like you're playing. Like this is a piece of simulation software that InGen designed for their employees for. Here's what if you ever get stuck on Isla Nublar, here's what you have to do. But
that would explain why Richard Hammond put his bloody biography in there.
There we go. But like the fact that there's just like random guns all over the place, and I think Chariot, you were like, "Oh, that seems relatively gamey," but like in my head, I thought of that like because you're essentially like you're going along. Kind of almost like a kind of a trail of death sort of thing, like all the way up until the end of the game, where in my mind it almost felt like a bit of a Dark Souls thing of all these turned over trucks and all these guns left behind were people who were just like Anne or like were in similar situations to Anne being stuck on this island, also trying to escape. But whereas she has been lucky at every turn, they weren't. But some of them got further ahead than the last ones. My headcanon because Snake, something you enjoyed about this game was that there seems to be like a million different gun models in this game.
I wanted to bring that up. Like the one misconception I had about this game, and this is a weird misconception because I'd only seen bits and pieces of it. I assumed, it was a rushed game. There wasn't much to it. For some reason, from what I saw, I assumed this game had an AK, a Desert Eagle, and a shotgun. I don't know where I had that misconception. There's only 3 gun models. That's kind of boring. It really goes to show how misconceptions can work on you, because then I get through it and it's like, why does this game have so many guns? I was just like, oh my god, that's a MAC-10. Oh my god, that's an AK with a drum mag. Oh my god, that's a fucking G11. That's not G11. It's like, oh my god, that's like a fucking... It had so many guns. It
has as many gun models as Counter-Strike does. Counter-Strike, which is a game which is literally fucking famed for the amount of different gun models that it has in it, kind of thing. And again, my headcanon for that was that I assumed that it was all just like cheap and shitty mercenaries that they had hired at InGen just to protect the scientists, because obviously they didn't.
It would make sense with one of the guns. They're not the. I call it the FAL. It's not a FAL. It's a British Army rifle. But it was like, they got a gun that was like, this is a gun that could punch a hole through a dinosaur. Like, it got dropped from the British military because it was like the round was too powerful for the service it needed to do.
Yeah, and it plays into the story that they're kind of telling through the gameplay of this, which is it's the story of all the Jurassic Park films as well, where I think, Chariot, you said it was like, why don't they just send the army in? And it's like, well, every time in the Jurassic Park... Did. Well, that's the thing. Every time in the Jurassic Park films, they try to send somebody in who's like, I'm Billy Big Dick, I've got a big gun, I know what I'm doing. They always get undone by hubris. Like, that is just Jurassic Park, is that hubris will just come and bite you.
Also, I've not seen the films, but wouldn't like a private company type not want to get the military involved because
they don't want anyone to find out about it because that's they're doing it.
They
all
wouldn't
on
want
the sneak.
any publicly facing body to know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, like, to a certain extent, I'm like, well, okay, like, a whole military operation surely would make some progress. Like you're probably going to lose people. But then again, you know, I guess in real life, an army did lose a war to emus, so maybe...
We were literally talking about that earlier. We were talking about emus earlier.
Yeah.
And again, that plays into the fantasy of you playing as Anne, which is essentially she's Ripley, as in she's not the strongest person on the ship or the most like gun-toting, but it's her ingenuity that lets her, survive against the dinosaurs, essentially. So, and I think the point of mentioning Anne, like, kind of being the sort of lucky protagonist in regards to, like, an Ellen Ripley or whatever, is that this also isn't, like, a conventional FPS game in that it's not the Doom power fantasy of, like, being able to kind of wipe out all these different enemies, or, like, Quake, where it's all these really elaborate sets. It's, like, the simplest things you do are kind of, like, that's the challenge of this, like that quote, that is the fun of Trespasser, is doing kind of things that would be taken for granted in like other games, which again kind of feels like this is a dinosaur training simulator. And I think if somebody who listens to Bullet Time wants a good idea for like a game that can be shown off at Summer Games Fest, it is doing a comedy version of Trespasser where it is called Dinosaur Simulator. But you still have the wobbly arm. You still have the dinosaurs that wobble about. You still have the boob health. Like, just basically remake the game in Unity, but call it Dinosaur Simulator.
Genuinely, this is a weird, unironic predecessor. Unintentional, unironic predecessor to all of the hand games that came out years on.
Surgeon Sim,
like
Octodad.
Surgeon Sim and...
Yeah.
All those games are like, oh, you know how the controls are all fucked and weird and funky, and that's the comedy? This game is like, yeah, do that and survive.
Well, Trespasser is like, oh, we're doing that, but it's not a joke. Like, this is the future of video
it's
games.
like, be a real person in a video game world. Like, again, like it's all about realism, and Doom Guy is not realistic.
No, he's a bloke.
Where you have to pick up guns and they wobble around and you can bash it against the wall and drop it. Now that's realism.
Yeah.
So, again, that's like the whole driving principle.
And again, it's funny that like our sort of barometer for quote realism in a video game is awkwardness. Or
inconvenience.
Inconvenience.
Weirdly realistic.
That reads more realistic than, being like a character in Call of Duty who is like a trained marksman kind of.
It's one of those interesting things that so few games can really do is, you don't use, well, I guess it is like, a lot of kind of special ops guys, they won't use like a full-length rifle indoors because at that length it's just inconvenient. And this game kind of emulates that, is when you're in a tighter quarter, it's like, oh, a pistol or an SMG becomes a lot more preferable to an AK, which is like, oh, all the walls are going to knock me off course, which is exaggerated by the fact she holds these fuckers one-handed all the way out, but
Yeah, well, and that's where, like, I almost feel like there's a bit of a missed opportunity in the fact that usually when you're inside,
and no dino can follow you,
there's not many dinosaurs inside, which isn't even necessarily like movie accurate, because like there's like the scene in the first movie where like the
kids hide in the kitchen
by the Velociraptor in the kitchen. There's no equivalent of that in this game.
No,
which that could have been that could have been an interesting segment, but I don't think that would have played well with the AI. I think it would have gotten very hung up on, trying to navigate tight corners of hallways.
They have enough problems in the outside.
So that was going to be my segue into talking about the development, because it's like, this game is like full of kind of missed opportunity for stuff like that, but also just what we were saying about the fact that they turn opening doors and like the final set, the hardest thing, the final set pieces of this game is walking up a mountain. Which is like, you would take that for granted in any other video game, and yet here it is like a genuine challenge is escalating up rough terrain. But
and honestly, like the combat in that section is actually easier because the Velociraptors are more likely to just
because they just keep falling off the mountain.
But then you have to like jump across crumbling bridges or like move a bunch of crates.
The part in that is going to stick in my mind forever is the plank of wood that is on the beam that is like parallel to where you're standing, and you have to shoot it in order to make it start rotating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. That was some Mario 64 shit.
Yeah, that made me think of Mario 64 as well. Like, it's just... And again, like... Well, I can't really think of other video games where
I can't even imagine that with better graphics. Like, these graphics have to be abstract for that just object to work in the
it was funny because I was gonna bring up visuals talking about like kind of them building the map of the world, but let's quickly talk about it now because I think this game is... I appreciate the look of this game the same way that I kind of appreciated the look of Die Hard Vendetta, where it felt like a thing of they kind of knew there were technical limitations, but they still did what they could with what they had. And I think this game is like oddly beautiful in
4K. This game is weirdly nice to look at in like somebody up near us. Granted, like I am wondering if this is a modern day thing where because I've got probably a view distance this game is not intended for, and just like I'm throwing so much power at it that I can see the dinosaurs before their AI has been kicked in.
No, actually, so that actually is not a modern day thing. I was reading a review, and I forget whether this was like the GameSpot or the IGN review, but it says like, oh yeah, this game has like longer view distances than most games, but that's actually a bad thing because you can see all the dinosaurs in the distance before they activate, and it's really weird. And so like that was a 1998 review.
Oh my god.
And like
so.
And again, as we were saying earlier, this is a giant island environment 3 years before Halo tries to do that in its second level. 6 years before Far Cry 1 is like lauded for doing this, like a giant cohesive jungle map kind of thing. And like, again, they're trying to do this in an era where like people are used to corridor shooters, like, because that is literally all you can... We have built these tools in such a way that they're really good at rendering walls, but not much else. Like,
yeah, well, and I think, like, I think a lot of developers at the time probably would have loved to have, like, outdoor environments, but, like, I think you don't see that too often because it is just such a technically demanding thing.
Yeah.
Or else you're just kind of in a forest where the trees are basically walls, so you are functionally...
Or Halo Combat...
Or it's like Half-Life, like the desert, and like, you can kind of get away with that because there's nothing in a desert.
The way I think it is Halo Combat Evolved does it the same way that kind of Metroid Prime does it, but Halo Combat Evolved does it in a smarter way, which is that game is just full of canyons, and that is how they cull information. Like, they just put you in a tight canyon, and then can move you into a slightly larger arena, then a tight canyon, then a large arena, then a tunnel, and then, like, they do that. Versus Metroid Prime, which literally just has, oh yeah, you're in this big, beautiful area. You can literally only get to the next area through this tiny-ass metal door. And it's like, okay, cool. Thanks. But yeah, like, this wanted to be completely cohesive, but then, unfortunately, because of the fucking development challenge that they gave themselves, there are strict loading scenes between, like, you just kind of hit and, like, you don't, like, get to... Well, sometimes you get to, like, actual exits, but then sometimes you'll just hit an invisible wall and it'll just start loading. And
yeah. I will say level design in this game is not as much of a consideration. It wasn't quite as worked out, and I will say I very rarely got lost. I got lost in the one section that I feel you're meant to be, which is the keycard puzzle in the town, which is probably also a thing if they wanted you to explore this town because it's the most complex bit of architecture they had to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and like that whole town level is kind of interesting because I think it's probably one of my least favorite levels in the game, but it could have also been one of the more interesting levels at the same time.
Sure.
It's just, the way it's executed specifically with this.
It's because, it's the Resident Evil 4 thing of we're now introducing close quarters where you're kind of used to large environments where you can see enemies in the distance and, work with that.
Well,
but now we're going to throw in rooms and corridors and stuff like that. But hey, you can use these to kind of narrow, all the dinos are trying to get through the same door, so you can use that to kind of, like shooting fish in a barrel, essentially.
I think beyond that
I think also
there's also kind of oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's also probably, like, one of the more non-linear levels. Like, a lot of the time it's like, okay, you are in a canyon, or like, oh, yeah, generally go down, like, this field, and you'll get where you need to go. Whereas, like, you don't, this is just a town, so, like, you don't necessarily know which buildings have the things you need. So you just have to, like, run around and explore it until you find what you need.
You have to go by like general shapes. Like, that one of them is a church because it has a steeple. That one of them is like kind of like a general store because it has kind of like an alcove outside. But then, figuring out whose people's, I guess you can sort of figure out which one's Hammond's house because it's the biggest in the town.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also like the, this is just another random detail that I find actually kind of charming. But there's just a big statue of some author. I think it's the guy who wrote Tarzan.
It's
Burroughs.
In the middle of town.
Burroughs. Interesting.
Yeah.
And the town is actually called Burroughs. It's thing on the outside. So Hammond was just a big fan of Burroughs, named a town after him, and built a statue of the author in his town.
Well, I think also like one of the streets is like Wells Street, like H.G. Wells.
So he's a sci-fi guy.
Yeah, it's just references to like just a bunch of sci-fi. I think there's like also like Vern as well. That's like a different street name. But
just all very cute, considered touches stuff. And again, like there's fucking AAA video games that do stuff like this, and like it just completely goes over your head. But like I guess with something like this, because it feels so kind of handmade. Like that stuff kind of stands out as being more charming, I guess.
And I guess because it's all Hammond's story, and then you go to the town he founded, everything is like a little character touch of he named every street after authors he liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Cute. Like, these were probably all the books that he read as a lad, which is why he became a scientist. He wanted to make science fiction science fact. Like, and then he says... I wanted
to say as well, just in regards to the town and wandering around that, in the first half of the game, I think like in the second half this kind of dies off, and also it kind of goes hand in hand with the level design being a little bit kind of clammy and awkwardly directed, and usually it's just, oh, there's stuff over there, I better investigate and hope it's progress. But in the first half of the game, and especially like in the first level and in the town, there are often just like piles of physics objects which just seem to be there to be like, look, it's 1997, this is 1998, it's impressive, just fiddle with his stuff. It's, it's a playgroundy, sandboxy kind of deal.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just the thrill of like, hey, here's some boxes, and we put stuff on top of them, and you can throw rocks at it to knock it over.
Yeah.
It's not even a puzzle, it's just like...
Yeah.
It's just Gary's mod style, like, it's just a thing of, hey, here's all these toys, just treat it as a little, like, activity pack game, and... marvel at what we've made.
And it's funny because
where you get all the guns, there's like there's just like a whole like it's like a shooting gallery with just a bunch of paint cans like at a carnival where you could just shoot them all off.
They just kind of have to for a moment, like at the beginning of it, is just like, forget the diegetic thing of it, forget the fact you're on a dinosaur island and we're trying to make this seem like a semi-coherent realistic place. Here's just, a fucking carnival of physics objects. Go ham, marvel at this stuff.
It's funny because, again, it feels like it is kind of the two defining things that these games sort of fight against each other. The one part which is they wanted to make this completely physics-driven sandbox, which is obviously, that's the legacy of this game, where it's like, that's the positive legacy of this game. But the fact that has to be an activity and there isn't really any kind of conventional... I mean, there are some scripted set-piece moments in the game, which I guess I'll mention one of them, which is that it's probably like one of the more famous ones, is that there's multiple times in the game where you can drop cars on dinosaurs. But one of them is literally rigged up like next to like a rock. And on the rock is like written... from your friends Stephen and what's his? Hold on, I'm going to quickly. We're live searching in the middle of the episode now.
Live googling.
We're live Googling, folks.
Live fact checking.
We are live fact checking.
Stephen and
Spielberg's kids. His name is. Did I forget to put it on the document?
Junior Spielberg.
You know what? We're just going to call him Spielberg Jr. That's fine. It just says on the rock, here's a gift from your pals, Steven and Steven Jr. And yeah, it is literally a note from Steven Spielberg saying, hey, we've put this set piece in here for you to use. And that's like one of the few moments in the game where it's like, here's the developer's hand at the wheel to show you something cool, versus the kind of the heart of this game, which is mostly like they didn't really want any moments like that. They wanted it to be totally player driven, from just this simulation systems just playing off each other, really.
Yeah, well, and I guess like that, that whole physicsy thing, like everyone talks about the Jeep moment.
Yes.
Like so many reviews, both contemporary and modern, they all mention that, but like that does kind of lead into like my thoughts in like the physics puzzles overall, because like it feels like, well, I guess this is kind of hard to look at in 2023 because I can't unexperience all of the games that have done physics way better than Jurassic Park has. Because like I could see someone from 1998 looking at some of the physics puzzles in this game and it blowing their mind, because like literally nothing else in games has ever done this. But I think like in retrospect, I have a lot of complaints about the physics puzzles. Well, and I guess kind of the big one is just that like it feels like it's the same puzzle just repeated
it's stack
in
a
slightly
box,
different
jump.
ways. Knock off a box from a ledge, build a bridge, continue with the level. And like that's almost every single physics puzzle in the game. They've invented all these cool physics tricks, but not actually the implementation, the gameplay of like, okay, cool, you can knock a box over and move it. Oh, what next? You put it in a place and you get on it. What? That's about it. That's what we've got. Or like even sometimes like the physics puzzles literally set up for you already. Like when you get into John Hammond's house, his stairs have deteriorated.
Oh yeah.
But there's just like boxes conveniently built in the they're not even like off to the side and you have to build the staircase. It's just already there, already built.
Just don't knock over the prearranged platforming puzzle. And
don't be too wobbly when you land.
No. Be very careful.
Try and control your wobbles as much as possible, despite the fact that the wobbles are also physics simulated by the game.
Yeah. Well, and this is where I was almost wondering if maybe like instead of going the more puzzle route with the physics, like I had mentioned the ruin encounter I had where like, the physics became a part of the combat. And there's a couple of points in this game where that happens, like in the ruins when you have like physics objects that are kind of more of the obstacle instead of like puzzle pieces. And I think those physics moments work a lot better than like the other physics puzzles.
Almost like the game becomes like a deadly serious version of Gang Beasts in a weird way.
Yeah.
First person like, Gang Beasts.
It's like don't activate the things that are going to crush you.
It's like you never really even use the boxes defensively, like, I've got to pop this in like the doorway here and I can set up a little bit of a kill zone or what have you.
Which is funny because like that's sort of like Half-Life Alyx. Like, when you started saying that, I was kind of thinking of that where you can use the physics props in that game almost kind of defensively. Like there's that clip of like somebody using a computer chair to like, almost like a line at the circus to keep like a head crab back at bay almost.
Yeah. Or like people that'll like fill a bucket with grenades and carry that around with them.
Yeah, I did that. I had a box full of grenades. I kept around with me.
Well, and again, like I think it's easy to point at like, every single game with physics that has done this way better.
Oh,
but
sure.
Also like Trespasser, I guess by nature of being like, I don't want to say literally the first one to do this, but pretty much like one of the first games with physics this complex,
Yeah.
it didn't really have a template to work with.
Oh, absolutely
except
not.
for like reality.
Yeah.
So like the book on how to make like compelling physics puzzles had not been written yet.
No.
So, I guess like I don't want to be too harsh on it, but also
I think this is probably one of the most Trespasser positive podcasts there is already.
No, and I'll
unless I'm
say,
mistaken.
yeah.
that's the kind of line that we have to tell with Bullet Time anyways, is that we do have to kind of remember the era that these games kind of came out and like the factors that led to their creation, not just from a technological standpoint, but also kind of like in regard, like 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, like the popularity of the Middle East as a combat zone in media at that time was like white hot, versus now we kind of look back at it and it's almost sort of, almost cringe because it was, it's about like, well, it's not technically based on the war in Afghanistan, but, arguably you can say
There's a
it is.
clear parallel. There's a reason why this fighting is happening here, and it's just because it's a vaguely defined combat zone.
Exactly. And with like Trespasser, it's a kind of a cool thing in regards to, like, if I'm going to compare this to like the physics in Tears of the Kingdom, where it's simulating suspension and like all these different kind of physics systems which are completely player driven and or like can be set and forget and still work absolutely fine, then like Trespasser isn't going to compare to that. But then Tears of the Kingdom didn't come out in 1998. This did, in an era where, as I said earlier, only 2 years earlier were there now dedicated hardware for 3D graphics for PC games. DirectX wasn't even a thing at this point in video games,
Right.
PC games, which kind of I'll kind of shrink this a little bit, mostly because I think we'll probably use the beginning essay of the episode to sort of go into the kind of development side of this game a little bit. But like, I think the thing with Trespasser that I find kind of so sort of appealing is the fact that this is like one of the rare few games which is like it is an all-star product. Like, this thing was built with the intention of being just something completely unlike anything people had seen in games before. Like, it wasn't like they weren't really like the thing that would ultimately undo it would be having to fit within the mode of regular video games of they telling them, hey, you literally have to deliver it by this date because we need to sell it alongside an AMD promotion. Versus if this was allowed to be in the oven for like 5 or 6 years, like it probably would have came out and been this like, world-changing thing. But because they had spent so long building all these physics systems and simulations and stuff like that, and then very much in the last few months then had to turn that into a game. Like, it is very much kind of just sort of undone by its own ambitions, but that is kind of what makes it such like this appealing product. And again, like you were saying, kind of, where does a game like this come from? And I mean, the two lead developers on it, Austin Grossman and Seamus Blackley, both got their start at Looking Glass, as in the developer beforehand that had essentially created the immersive sim, another genre which has been sort of, even to today, massively misunderstood as like, well, these are very ambitious games in regards to trying to simulate the real world, but because they kind of miss the appealing gamey elements that I'm kind of used to elsewhere, or this is just kind of a bit too ambitious for its own good, they don't really stick. Which, like, the both of them, they work on the original System Shock, and you can see the DNA of that within Trespasser, where, you have audio logs, but they're made a little bit more, well, they're not as diegetic as the ones in System Shock, where they're literally recordings left behind by people on the ship. It is a story being told by this island about, John Hammond, but then just the fact that they're both also kind of proto-survival horror titles, but played through this sort of first-person perspective. But yeah, DreamWorks Interactive, a developer that we haven't got into yet as well, is literally the games development arm of DreamWorks. Spielberg's like Katzenberg gets kicked out of Disney. he goes to Spielberg and says, we are two men literally at the height of our powers in our respective industries. Why don't we join forces? And so they just start up a production company where Spielberg's going to focus on the live action side and Katzenberg focuses on the animated side. And that's how we end up with fucking Shrek. As a result, is because of Katzenberg and DreamWorks. But
so DreamWorks Interactive.
Yes.
I had read an article, about Trespasser a while ago, but I'm forgetting some of the details. But wasn't it a thing where you had all these game developers here, but everyone else at the company didn't really, they were all film people, so no one really knew what to do with this team. So Austin and Seamus left. They left Looking Glass because they kind of saw where the wind was blowing and said, well, we have the talent. We can kind of go wherever we want. And the reason that they went with DreamWorks Interactive is because, they have such big, powerful names behind it. They're going to be able to give us the budget to make the games that we want. But the moment they get into the company, it's just all film people who have no idea how games development works. And initially, they're all doing these projects which have nothing to do with other DreamWorks projects, up until the point that the two of them are the ones that suggest, hey, The Lost World is coming out in 1997. Why don't we have a Jurassic Park game to go along with that and have that? And again, we were kind of talking about this right at the beginning of the episode with how Disney's Dinosaurs was this big tech project.
I mean, that's actually something I'm kind of wondering about. The way this company sounds was they don't know anything about games. Was it were they going in with the direct thing of we're going to make games, or was it going in with the thing of we're going to experiment and we're going to kind of, figure things out?
I think it was a little bit because I think LucasArts was what I thought the initial thing was, where literally...
Because my brain was going to Lucas's special effects company, which was just a massive innovator. Lots of money thrown at
ILM literally
VFX.
comes out of he wants to do graphics for the first Star Wars films, which don't exist yet. So he's pulling in all this talent from practical effects to eventually, and very early digital effects stuff, and that's how ILM is formed. But then the reason that Lucas forms LucasArts is because he goes, well, and I think I mentioned this a tiny bit on the Outlaws episode, but basically he kind of goes, well, film is just the, that comes from theatre, that comes from novelizations, and games are the next step from there. It's interactive films, essentially, and we want to be on the cutting edge because, hey, we're the film guys. Maybe we can innovate in this space as well, which I think is partially why they were so fabulous at making point-and-click adventure games, because it is essentially, especially in regards to how it's presented, it's digital theatre. You move characters about and you give them prompts. And I think Spielberg probably saw the opportunities with how 3D was development. And again, I think I mentioned this on the Time Splitters episode. I think I mentioned this on the Time Splitters 3 episode, actually, about so Snake, fucking DreamWorks Interactive, even though I'm kind of cutting to the end of the story here, they become EA Los Angeles, the fucking guys who make GoldenEye Rogue Agent.
Yeah, okay. God, why does it come back here so often?
Why does it come back to GoldenEye? And the thing is as well that Trespasser was a bomb for DreamWorks Interactive, but literally a year later they put out Medal of Honor, which is a giant, it is the complete not as only the opposite to Trespasser in regards to it's very conventional. It's literally Spielberg says that his inspiration was he was working on Saving Private Ryan, and during his downtime he was playing GoldenEye with his son, and he goes, why, this is, people who are going to see Saving Private Ryan are people who are my age. But people his age, they're going to get their stories from video games. So why don't I do Save It Private Ryan, the video game, which is what becomes Medal of Honor, and obviously becomes such a ginormous hit, and basically is why we're now in Call of Duty Hell, because obviously Infinity Ward comes from the 2105 or whatever that developer's called, but they make Allied Assault, and then literally get bought by Activision a year later to make the first Call of Duty game, and so on and so forth from there. But I think, in Spielberg's head, I think he had the similar thing to Lucas, where it was, games are a really interesting space that we should be developing in. And I think he just must have looked at Austin, he must have looked at Seamus and thought, yeah, like what they're pitching here is like the graphical, like, because again, like the first Jurassic Park film is like a huge watershed moment for digital effects and especially computer generated imagery. Like they hired Phil Tippett, who was the motion stop motion guy on Empire Strikes Back and stuff like that. And the initial plan was that all the dinosaurs were going to be done in very like up to date and very kind of slick stop motion. But then a guy in ILM shows him a CG T-Rex, and he looks at Phil Tippett and he goes, "Sorry, this is what we're doing now. This is the future." And it's funny because you look at Jurassic Park, a film that came out now nearly over 30 years ago, and the CG in it, I would say, holds up like relatively well. Like, just because, again, and they kept Phil Tippett around because obviously, you know how kind of maquettes work and stuff like that, so you understand lighting and and kind of texture and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, in Spielberg's head, he probably thought the way that we have made technical innovations in Jurassic Park, these guys are going to do the same for video games. And so was happy to throw his money behind it. And here's another thing as well, which I forgot to mention, is the fact that DreamWorks Interactive was part owned by DreamWorks and part owned by Microsoft. As in the fucking computer guys.
Yeah.
And so it was a thing of, hey, we have the complete might of the people building PCs behind this project. And that is Seamus Blackley, who was one of the guys on the project. That's how he ends up then at Microsoft, because Bill Gates is like really impressed by all this physics stuff that he's doing in Trespasser. And he goes, hey, we're putting together this thing called DirectX. Do you want to help? Ends up at Microsoft doing that, and then becomes the father of the Xbox, the console that arguably makes the FPS like such a ginormous thing, which is why we have the Bullet Time podcast as a result. So Trespasser is just like it's at the fulcrum of like all these like really important things in history. And again, it is like made by like an NBA all-star team of developers, but they're basically, so this needs to go out with an AMD promotion, so whatever the fuck you've got, you just have to put it out. And they basically had to pull everything together in the last few months. Austin Grossman, who I haven't mentioned much yet, he was like Warren Spector has basically said that he was the secret source at Looking Glass. Like he wrote like a lot of the written stuff and a lot of the audio stuff in System Shock. Like he was the guy who basically went into their games and kind of plotted them out. And he was the guy in Trespasser who wrote all of John Hammond's biography stuff. Like apparently, like his memory of like his favorite thing that he's ever done in games was flying out to London to be in a recording booth with Richard Attenborough and have him read the stuff that he wrote. That
does have to be a fucking highlight, and especially an odd one in games in the 90s to get. Oh yeah, by all accounts, and I would say from the quality of the acting, he was putting his fucking. He wasn't like, phoning in the job.
No, and for a job where phoning it in would have been completely appropriate because he's literally reading a biography. But no, he is fucking... he's sticking with it. And again, we got to mention as well that Anne is voiced by Minnie Driver, who was like a relatively, like she's in GoldenEye or like The World Is Not Enough, but she was like a pretty well-known actress at the time. So it does have like star power behind it. Like, yeah, like just... This is like again, like I think maybe if they had another year or two to develop this could have been like maybe the game that changed video games. I mean, I don't know, but like,
I mean, that's kind of the interesting contradiction of this game is this could have been the game that changed video games, but also it kind of did already. Like,
it changed video games in bits and pieces as other people took what it did. And, kind of separated it from the Trespasser whole and fit it into a system that was maybe more suited for it. It's like, okay, like Half-Life 2, it takes the physics and, kind of builds more of the game around it. And it feels a lot more natural as a result. You have Halo. It makes the two weapon system work a lot better. Crysis and Far Cry do the whole naturalistic jungle environment. You eventually get VR and like those games focus on like the one-hand first-person shooter stuff.
Yeah.
It all changed. Like all that stuff changed gaming. It's just it's not attributed to like Trespasser. It's attributed to like 4 other games or like a bunch of other games.
Like it's funny. I'm just looking through
thing of like a game is trying this much new all at once.
Yeah, it is. It's like
anomaly of it.
It's like if, like in the 1920s, you heard heavy metal for the first time. You haven't even heard rock and roll or so. Like this is just something completely like out of left, like impossible to comprehend kind of thing. It's funny actually. One of the stories that I forgot to mention from the research that I had done on this, but oh god, I've completely lost it now. Oh dang it. Yeah, but no, it's just like such a. Oh no, so the demo that they initially managed to get their funding with, like that they took to DreamWorks and they were impressed by what they were doing. So here's the thing as well. DreamWorks weren't initially thinking that they were going to do a Jurassic Park game. And like just for the folks at home, like this isn't the first Jurassic Park game. They like basically the first film came out. They made like a bunch of them, but they're all like as you would expect film tie-ins of the time. Like, oh, there's a top-down adventure game, and there's a Sega light gun game. Which Snake, have you ever seen the Sega Jurassic Park?
I have not seen the Sega light gun Jurassic Park.
So it's got 2 things going for it, which is like so peak 90s Sega. Which is one, is super scalar technology like Outrunners, where it's not real 3D, but it's like planes of 2D images that are all layered on top of each other to create the illusion to 3D, but they blast by at like 120 frames a second, so it's so insane to look at.
It's like the tech the Narc guys were like throwing out there with...
Yeah, and the way that they do the T-Rex is like it's broken into multiple parts. Like its head animates and it's like pre-rendered 3D, but they've like broken up its neck, so it's like separate pieces. So the way that it's like Dynamite heady, but like slightly more realistic looking. And the second thing that makes it so like Sega is the fact that the arcade cabinet was a Jeep that you had to sit in, like a little plastic Jeep that you had to sit inside.
I like stuff like I'm a child for that stuff. I do still like that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's it's something that people rarely forget with arcade games, which no modern games do, which is like it's the presentation outside of the game that does a lot to kind of drive the experience.
You can still see that kind of stuff in some like seaside arcade games, but
totally.
There are a couple of Jeep games that I know of.
I mean, growing up, there was like a Chuck E. Cheese, and there was like a Jeep game, that was like a light gun shooter, but it was a thing where you're like tourists that get like on like a tropical island. And you have to like shoot all the weird mutant.
Oh yeah, I know that
creatures.
Game. Yeah,
but I think even on a simple level though, like the House of the Dead arcade machine had the guns where the receivers like properly, like anytime you shot the receivers, like went back and made like an enormous clacking sound.
And, I love that. I'm sad I never got to play like House of the Dead 3 in arcade because that had fucking shotguns.
Oh, I had a fucking shotgun. Yeah, and again, I want to play the lighting game with the plastic shotgun, or Time Crisis 4 where it had the plastic Tech 9.
Yeah, and you had pedals. I fucking love.
Yeah, you had like physical
Time
pedals
Crisis
to go
arcade
into
machines.
God, yeah. Saying all that though, obviously Jurassic Park Trespasser doesn't have that because it's a PC game. But what I was saying all of that stuff because obviously there had been other licensed games, but they were fine. They weren't particularly ambitious. But the way that they were able to secure this deal was that Seamus had built this demo, which was a 3D island, like all rendered in real time and could be fully explored, and had full moving dinosaurs on it, which had impressed them enough that they then went on to do like full development. Which was a demo that fucking Crytek had made to secure the funding for Far Cry 1. And they called the story that I told you on the Homefront episode. They had made that exact demo like 5 or 6 years later, and that was what got them Far Cry 1.
Oh my gosh.
And but as I said to you at the time, there's no Dinosaur Far Cry game, and it's so like the why
Turns
it's the
out
most
game
obvious...
investors, they just love dinosaur islands. If you want to get your game made, give them a dinosaur island.
Give them an island because they go, wow, look at those leaves in real time, and then when a dinosaur comes out, they go, oh, just here's my fucking credit card, just go to town, boys. Like,
I've got a briefcase full of money, and I'm handing it to you right now.
They just start taking all their clothes off and throwing them at you, and their watches and stuff like that. God.
Game investors are just all John Hammond. They just want their dinosaur island, and they will spare no expense.
They just have a heart attack there and then when you see the dinosaurs. It was funny as well, and again, this is something I'll probably mention in the essay at the beginning, but like Jurassic Park, it's written by Michael Crichton, who like had written a bunch of other science fiction stuff beforehand, but like probably more famously wrote Westworld. Well, wrote and directed Westworld, which is like a story which was like, it was in the 1970s, but basically concerns itself with the ethics of digital worlds. Like, it's a theme park that you can go to where it's like full of robots and you can run them over like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that, and you know they have to play along with it. And then Jurassic Park is essentially dipping into similar themes to that, but then also it's Frankenstein in regards to why did I, should I have really have should I have done this just because I could? And so weirdly, like Trespasser kind of feels thematically like it builds on all of those points of they wanted to make a simulated world essentially to the extent of like what Crichton did in Westworld, but like actually wanted to do it for real through like physics systems and stuff like that. But unfortunately, because of the era that came out in, they couldn't quite pull it off. But again, do you think if they made a game like Trespasser today, which did exactly what it was trying to do back in 97, but with the robustness of like modern physics stuff, do you think it could be like I think people, I mean, do you think people would like dig it, I guess? Like,
I genuinely don't know, because it depends on that kind of confluence of fucking mechanics and such. Maybe?
Yeah, I think the fact that it does feel like a kind of, it does like feel like DRS'd with dinosaurs, I think probably could find a, like, I'd play it.
I think it depends on how it's like marketed and how people just, I genuinely think how the first responders to the game kind of like take it, and set the kind of expectations of everyone else.
Yeah, I think in my head it's kind of a thing of like, it would feel derivative of other stuff that's on the market, but I think because of all the weird stuff that it does, and the fact that just like, as a concept, like being stuck on Jurassic Park Island, no one's really riffed on that. Like, I know there's like that Wii game, like Escape from Bug Island, whatever it is. Like, again, like this almost kind of like if you lean into the survival horror elements like a tiny bit more, but if they were able to make all the promises they wanted to, like, it's a completely consistent open world with no loading. Like, you can go sort of wherever you want, but like the main thing is just survival. Like, I think people could dig it, but then also I wonder whether people would be like, oh, why hasn't this got a hunger system like this new game? Or, oh, why hasn't it got this?
It could work either way, I think, because I think people would mostly be comparing it to Amnesia, which was mentioned earlier, in like kind of wobbly arm physics survival where you are relatively weak to the opponents you face.
Yeah.
I don't know if open world would do it. I think it still would work better if it was semi-directed, just seamless, no loads.
Well, and like, I think also like some of the Cruelty Squad inspired games kind of go in the direction of like having weirder controls, or like, there's one I'm thinking of. It has like a square aspect ratio, and it doesn't fully like I think it does the thing where like you move around, but then you have to stop, and then like essentially go into aiming mode, and then you move your mouse around the screen, and you can aim anywhere on your screen. Like I can't remember the name of the game. I think the developers like called it Cat Milk or something like that. But like, that is, kind of leaning into like the gunplay, but not really like the physics. Like it has like the whole, you can aim anywhere you want. It just doesn't really have the physics component of like velociraptors trying to get you.
Sure.
I guess like theoretically it could like a game like Jurassic Park Trespasser could work.
Yeah.
Though I think also just like Jurassic Park Trespasser, you know, has a lot of design choices that, you know, would probably have to be ironed out.
Or people nowadays would kind of balk at the idea of doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially as far as like level design goes, I think they'd maybe be a bit more cagey on like.
No, I think you
how
would need to
some
add a few
levels
more
flow.
activities to it to make it feel a bit more. Yeah.
I also think like the big open spaces, they'd go like, "Are we sure we want the player to walk for 5 minutes?" And in 97, it'd be like, "Yeah, because it's a cool environment." They'd walk for the sake of it, or it's like to take it in. It'd be, now it'd be like, maybe not, and people aren't just going to be impressed by an environment anymore.
No,
which is
and I think
a shame, but
I think we dig into that a little bit when we were talking about Home from the Revolution, which is like you have an area that large, and the fear is that we don't want people to be bored at any point. So you do the Breath of the Wild, like Far Cry thing of there's literally an activity every like 3-4. Like, oh, you found an audio, you found another Hammond audio look. Oh, you found this piece of paper. Oh, you know. Like, they would clutter it with stuff where almost, I think, that sheer lack of anything, like, again, I don't think it was totally intentional by the developers, apart from they were aiming for this size, but I know it's just nice. You can just walk around and just see, like, big dinos in the distance. It's just kind of chill, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I guess like one thing about walking around and appreciating dinosaurs, one thing I do appreciate about the game is that like the first dinosaur you see is the big long neck one.
Oh yeah.
You know, it literally mirrors, you know, kind of the scene in the movie because that's like the first dinosaur that like all the you know visitors see is the big long neck one.
I will say,
and I think it even plays like the same song.
It does. It plays, well, I don't know the same song, but it plays a song. But I just wanted to bring up that the music cues in this game seem to all be a little bit off. Like
They're
that music played, that
Yeah.
music played like a good 15-20 seconds before like the dinosaur was in view, and it's like, oh, okay, that's why this kind of swelling music is playing at this moment.
By the way, fun fact about the music in this game: the first video game production that John Williams ever worked on. They got him to do the music for Jurassic. Again, the way that they advertised this game, they were promoting it, was that it is the digital sequel to the Lost World Jurassic Park. Like they posited, like again, they had made all these kind of tie-in and you know merchandisey Jurassic Park games, but because of the way that like they were pushing it to Spielberg and selling it, was like, no, this video games are like the next step forward. This is a sequel on par with like you could call it Jurassic Park 3. This is the next one. So you said that like when you look at the game on Wikipedia and stuff, it's not called Jurassic Park: Trespasser. It's just called Trespasser. Like you look at you can see the logo on the front for Jurassic Park, but they are just purely selling it on like this is, you know, an entity all on itself that is like slightly tied into this thing, which is, I don't know, interesting, I guess. But yeah, Trespasser.
Yeah, well, I guess like with such a big team behind it, you know, like it'd be interesting to see if Trespasser would have maybe been more successful or less successful if it. Like, what if they used the same like engine and mechanics in a non Jurassic Park game?
You reckon? You reckon Jurassic Park might be the thing that kind of dragged it down? Or?
No, I
you just mean you wanted to see that engine used elsewhere, I guess.
Well, yeah, like you know, it'd be interesting to see like the same approach, but like maybe instead of like fighting dinosaurs, you're fighting like aliens.
Well, not only that,
like does that play better with like audiences of the 90s?
You know what's funny is, I'm sorry, I just got to bring up a weird coincidence. It was Bill Brown was the one who did the music for Trespasser, was it?
Oh, okay. Well, John Williams for some reason had his. I think he worked with Bill Brown on it.
I'm trying to double check something because I read some trivia, but it might be some crossed wires that a guy called Bill Brown did the music for a game called Trespasser, and I'm trying to work out, is that Jurassic Park Trespasser?
Or just a game called Trespasser. No, I think you might be right. I know John Williams worked on it, but I don't know if he like was the full-time composer on it. I think he might have just made some suggestions. Unlike Modern Warfare 2, where... oh, no, that was Hans Zimmer who works on Modern Warfare 2. Cross wires. Gosh damn
I'm
it.
just trying to work something out. But it was... I just wanted to bring it up because I was like, apparently music from Trespasser was reused, and some music meant for it wound up being used in Clive Barker's Undying.
That makes sense, because DreamWorks Interactive made Clive Barker's Undying.
Yeah. I found that on the Trescom forums where people were mining games like 2 more Trespasser tracks found, and it's like, okay.
Actually, let's quickly... that might be a kind of a nice place to wrap this up then in regards to, like... so first I'm just going to read a quick review from the time, from GameSpot. They got a 3.9 out of 10 from GameSpot. And the way that they end this review is, you still want to hear more? Well, the arm looks ridiculous, and you can get it to bend in sickening ways that no human would be able to bear. It's also absolutely ludicrous the lengths the designers force you to go through to pick up an object. Yes, it's realistic, but it sure as hell isn't fun having to jut out your hand at every object and hit 2 keys while maneuvering your arm to precise point to pick it up. Half the time, I ended up pushing the object around like some drooling idiot instead of picking it up. And why couldn't Anne have scrounged for a backpack at the crash site so she could carry more than 2 items?
Jesus, reviews haven't changed in 2 decades. People are still
the pedantry at the max. Yeah. Better yet, why don't your 2 items carry over from level to level, even though it's supposed to be a seamless level transition? You see what I mean? This game is just too frustrating, too boring, too tedious, too enamored in his vaunted physics engine. It's a good engine, if you don't consider the bugs, but it doesn't amount to much of a game. The thing is that I don't disagree with that, but I'm also a lot more positive. I'm like, but it's fucking... yeah. What other game was doing that? Like, this came out the same year as Bloods, which, I mean... listen to the Blood episode of Bullet Time if you want to hear my opinions on Blood, but...
Well, and I guess, like, maybe, like in thinking about that review, I think that almost kind of gets at, like, maybe, like, one of the follies of going for, like, realism, which is that, like, a lot of people who were playing video games in the 90s...
didn't want realism.
Yeah, they wanted escapism, and their cool guns, and, like,
also,
things that were
if you try and go for realism, you make the unrealistic stuff stick out all the more.
Yeah. Well, it's like, people go to these games so they, can escape reality. Yeah. But then, like, maybe it was just like people didn't want to be reminded at how awkward opening a door could be. I don't know.
What you're saying,
I don't want to like brag, but I've never found picking something up off the floor as hard as that review makes it sound.
You know what, though?
No.
Chariot, I think you made a good point, which is where we are today. This game was aiming for unrealism. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck, I fucked that up.
It was aiming
People were aiming for... They were aiming for realism, but what people wanted was the Unreal Engine unrealism, which is why that's done so popular.
What I want is the Unreal Sim.
I think there are a couple of Unreal in... I think there are... No, Prey was made in fucking CryEngine, which I find so shocking, because it's like, where's the islands? I thought you could only make islands in the CryEngine. Where's the island? But there isn't one in Prey, unfortunately. But,
where's my island? You're the island engine.
Yeah,
where's my dinosaur island?
Where's the Dinosaur Island engine?
Just banging your table. Give me Dinosaur Island as you play Prey.
But, yeah, so... reviews at the time weren't particularly kind on it. It has a pretty low Metacritic score as well, unfortunately. But people did gel with Trespasser. I think it's probably because of what we've been talking about, which is that it is so, like, massively ahead of its time. But not only that, but, like, sure, the activities are simple, and it is, like, initially very awkward, but the moment that you start to engage with it, it does click, and it does feel... it does become its own kind of fun in its own way. And sort of as a result, there is like now like a pretty dedicated fan community around Trespasser. Tres.com, I believe, being the... Trescom.
I think it's Trescom.
Yeah, Trescom being the main website for that, which is where we've been able to get the modern patches and stuff for this game in order to play it on our PCs. But people are also making new versions of Trespasser for, like, somebody was working on a version that was for Oculus Rift 2.
I watched a video of that earlier today. It was funny, actually. Same guy who was doing that 10 years ago was making, like, a modern-day, like, patch graphical overhaul, and then he disappeared for years, and now it's come back, and he's just doing it again, but as a VR game. So it's almost a weird 2-in-1 deal of massively updated Trespasser and now VR controls.
People make new levels for Trespasser. People add, like, new items into Trespasser. People genuinely quite like Jurassic Park Trespasser.
Well, and I think, like, part of, I think why this game got such a cult fan base is, like, it is awkward, and like, I'm not surprised that most people that tried it, bounced off the game.
Sure.
But if you end up liking Jurassic Park Trespasser, there's not really anything else that's doing what it does.
No.
Even today, like, you have to have, like, VR stuff, and that can be expensive. And even then, that's kind of a different, a bit of a different experience from what Trespasser is like.
I'll say, I think Trespasser in VR would be very easy.
I think it'd be a bit. I think it'd be a bit of a baby's game. That being said, it might be a good onboarding game for VR.
It could be, yeah. If that trespassing VR game ever comes out and it doesn't have, like, new content, I'm pretty sure I'm throwing down a gauntlet. I could crack that in under 2 hours.
All right, folks. He said it. We have recorded evidence of this, so
I could bum rush that game.
Please look forward to Snake bum. Please look forward to Snake boob rushing. Jurassic Park Trespasser, constantly looking down at his chest to see if he's got his health's doing okay. So, Cherry, was it you that said, or was it Snake that said that initially the plan was that the character was going to have the tattoo on their arm?
That was Chariot.
Yeah.
I don't remember bringing up that fact.
I don't remember bringing up that fact either.
Oh, did I dream that? Did I have a Trespasser dream?
Did you have a Trespasser dream?
Did we all have Trespasser dreams? Oh my god. Maybe I did. That's a bit of a boring dream if that's the case.
I dreamt up a cooking sim. You dreamt, what if the tattoo was on the arm?
I dreamt that I was on a Discord call with Chariot,
right,
and he said, yeah, so they actually planned to, it was going to be a tattoo on the arm, not on the breast, actually. Oh, interesting. But no, like, it is, I was going to say, because we've evoked it a couple of times, Far Cry, but, like, do you think Trespasser was like the Can It Run Crisis of its day? As in...
Oh, I don't think anyone wanted to run it is the problem there.
Well, I think it was, but like it didn't review well enough for like people after the fact to seek it out. Because like you needed a really high computer.
No, but that's why I was thinking. Run it. Yeah.
And so like even a lot of people who might have been interested couldn't play it because you needed a really good computer. And even at the recommended specs, it still is, it had not ideal frame rates. There were lots of bugs.
That's the thing. Like, I sent you guys like an LP of the game made in about 2011. Oh,
yes.
I think. And even in 2011, that game was stuttering on a guy's PC. Yeah. I was able to run it 4K, no frame drops, but I'm on some fucking monster machine. So I think I've got this weirdly luxurious version of the game at this stage.
Yeah. And so, like, I think it does maybe have an equivalent level of, maybe not quite as extreme as, the...
I've had more kind of like the Crisis...
Can It Run Crisis thing.
Yeah.
But, like, it was such a big technological leap. It just didn't review well enough for people to want to, like, upgrade their computer to play it.
And, like, because Crisis is much more of, like, a mainstream hit than Trespasser ever was. But I meant more, like, the whole thing with Can It Run Crisis, I think, like, part of the appeal of this game is that... Because, again, Crisis is very visually, like, impressive and does require the hardware for that. But gameplay... Well, actually, no. I guess gameplay-wise, it kind of develops on what Far Cry did, as in... this complete freedom of approach, that's why you have a giant island. And then with every subsequent Crisis game, they make it more linear. Whereas, like... But it still kind of plays like an FPS game. It still plays like Doom. Versus this, where it's like... You couldn't play something like Trespasser on the PlayStation. Like, there's not enough buttons. Like, Like, I was thinking of that, like, if they made a new version of it, like, how would they translate the controls? And I was thinking in my head, they should let you be able to manipulate the other arm, but what they should do is that they should map the arms to each control stick, and then you move forward and backwards with the triggers instead, and then maybe you rotate left and right by, I don't know, maybe using the shoulders or something like that, but, yeah, I guess if you only had...
It's got its own problems.
Sure, yeah. That becomes its own weird thing.
It'd be great if they just told you, "I'll buy a second," even though this was PCS, like
buy two mice, yeah.
Yeah, even though this was like PS2 ports at the time, so you couldn't really do that. It's like...
No, sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is notable that, like, even something like Surgeon Simulator, you know, that one only lets you use one arm.
That's true.
You know, even with all the advanced, you know, tech, it still is just like, you know, two arms, that'd just be too much.
Yeah, so you'd use the left stick for moving
control scheme,
and the right stick for arm stuff. Yeah, that makes sense.
I do actually want to bring up a couple of my favourite little things. I'm not sure if one of them came up, because they don't really go anywhere else, but... So one of my favourite things was the way the AI in this game was meant to work, and one of the big show-offy points was, like, the dinosaurs have various, like, needs meters that kind of govern how they act. So it's like, you know, anger, hunger, like a bunch of others.
They attack other dinosaurs, yeah.
Yeah, and because the game was kind of needing to be near release, and they could never get the system to work properly. When the system was fully implemented, like... Technically, it is still in the game. Like, the dinosaurs have a lot of needs. But when they were, like, hand-adjusted to be like, this dinosaur needs this, wants this, is good in this, it just led to indecision, because the AI would just constantly change its prioritization of, like, what it's going to do at the moment. So, never worked. So they just turned hunger and anger to max. And there's a couple of... That's how the dinosaurs function. They're
constantly hangry, right?
They're constantly hangry. That's just like the programming result is like, okay, system doesn't work, just make them aggressive. There are actually a couple dinosaurs in the game that they forgot to change the values for, and it seems like they have no AI. I didn't run into them though, but according to my research, there are a couple of dinosaurs that they didn't give them that pass and actually fix the... I say fix their AI, essentially neuter it to the point that it would work.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that does actually, like, bring up another, you know, smaller thing that I do actually quite like about this, which is that, like, the dinosaurs are not, like, mindless enemies, like in a lot of, you know, shooter games from the time. Like, if you deal a lot of damage to
they start to run away,
they flee.
Yeah, they start to run away. And like, that feels like a very,
that's something actually
response.
I started working into my strategy, is like, if I need to save ammo, I'd shoot them and I'd hope they would, like, back off or, like, think better of attacking. And sometimes it actually paid off, even though I was now, like, sometimes they would head in the direction of my objective, like where I was going, and be like, I'd have to constantly keep an eye on them, like we were on a very awkward walk together.
Yeah, it's like they're waiting for you to turn your back so they can, you know, sneak up on you.
Yeah, and it's this weird thing with the wobbly arm physics of, like, me trying to keep a gun trained on them as I advance through the level. Like, don't you do anything. I'm ready.
I don't know why, but that reminds me of, you remember there was that, like, Ubisoft game that they showed off at an E3 years ago, which was called, like, I Am Alive or something.
Oh, that game sucked.
The final game is fucking awful. Yeah. But the trailer that they
I Am Alive, yeah.
The trailer that they showed for it, and there's a bit in it that, like, always sticks in my mind of, like, you can scrounge for weapons and stuff like that, but finding ammo is a lot trickier. But, like, you can hold people up with an empty gun, and as long as you just convince them that there is ammo in it, they will still treat it like it's a loaded weapon, essentially. Like, you could use a gun for negotiation in that respect. But then in the final game, it only happens in, like, 2 scripted sequences or something stupid like that.
No, I've beaten that game. That does happen a lot, because that game is very stripped down, but it's like every combat encounter is a puzzle of, like, okay, there are 4 enemies and you have, like, 3 bullets, so figure out who to kill in what order and then keep one guy back. And then
interesting.
You can maybe use the machete. I didn't like it. I'm not saying it's a bad game, even though I did. I will actually just concede. There are people who enjoy it, and it's got interesting ideas, but I didn't like it.
No, I heard it wasn't... And I think as well, it was the Ubisoft, like... They advertised the game as being, like, way more ambitious and creative than it ultimately was. Because I think as well, it got massively pared down into, like, a downloadable game or something, didn't
It's not like a full game. It's like a 5-6 hour kind of like survival horror game with kind of like puzzly combat. So if you like the sound of that, you might enjoy it.
It's funny though, because the way that like you learn about the mechanics that they want to implement and stuff like that, and it's just you think of that, like the fact that they had hunger and anger and stuff like that, and it just makes me think of like the bit in MGS3 where you could like before you go into the base, you could blow up like all the supply depots, and if you do that, like the soldiers on the field don't have any like food or ammo or anything, and so they're just easier to deal with.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite MGS3 like things, just the bizarre length you can go to is blow up the food depot. Now guards will be hungry. Then you tranquilize a poison snake, and then you throw it out there as food, and then they will eat a poison snake and die. And it's like, okay, that's fucking weird, but sure, that's grand. It's
great. It's all like weird. It's all like systems on top of system stuff, and it's like you can absolutely see something like that working in, because I can see that like the food supply is like the dinosaurs keep going to eat, but like you can use it yourself. But if you use it too much, then the dinosaur, not only do you no longer have any food, but the dinosaurs also no longer have any food, so that makes them even angrier, kind of thing. Yeah, like again, it's just I don't know, like sim and like systems driven stuff. I just always find so fascinating because of the fact of like, what's the D&D thing? Like, how much can I get away with this? And again, like this came out 2 years after Quake, and the fact that they were trying to do all this stuff is just really admirable. So.
I just find it funny how it didn't work. So the solution in the end was they didn't unimplement the system. They just made it they just turned it to its most simplest parameters for the purpose of a functional game.
And again, Resident Evil 4 literally has like aggrometer in it, and if you play it in professional, they're just constantly angry. And it's an interesting thing seeing like, oh, what does the game look like when they're constantly angry versus seeing the angry meter go up and down, and then. Literally, the game they do afterwards, God Hand literally puts the angry meter. It lets you play with it to see like how enemy behaviors actually change when you use it, kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
No, like if you've never seen God Hand, there is a bar in the bottom left which is genuinely like the better you do at the game, it turns up and the enemies play better and fight against you. But you also have moves to reset the meter, which is genuinely getting on the ground and begging for mercy.
There's taunting to make them angrier, to make it harder, but there's also groveling to take the meter down.
And every time you take a hit, the game like takes some difficulty off. So it's genuinely like you are seeing the difficulty in effect. It is like player-facing difficulty.
Yeah.
My other favourite feature was... in Hammond's mansion, none of us, I don't think, encountered this. I only saw it in the Let's Play. There is a cattle prod weapon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's hanging out of the window, which is why it's hard to spot, because it's like a grey metal rod on a grey concrete fucking wall poking out of a window. And the moment you pick it up, it just starts sparking electricity. So it's a semi-viable melee weapon. Or it would be, but because now it's constantly sparking... if you stow the weapon, it will kill you, because it will start damaging you, because it's on your body.
Oh my gosh.
So you can't put the weapon away. That is bizarrely like how physics-driven and kinetic the game is, that it is working against itself at times.
That's great.
It's really funny.
Like, when you talked about like special weapons in like John Hammond's mansion, I thought you were going to mention the
lady's pistol,
lady
the
gun.
lady model,
which
is the most damaging revolver in the game. So yeah, in John Hammond's mansion, there is a tiny little revolver called a lady model or something, and it is the best weapon in the game. It can, I think it can two-shot near enough everything and probably wipe out a T-Rex in with its full mag, maybe.
And again, I always make the joke that environmental storytelling is when you find a skeleton on a toilet. What is the story behind why is there this lady's pistol in
why is there a cattle prod in your mansion? What were you doing, Hammond?
What were you cattle prodding? Why do you have a secret? Well, I guess I know why he has a secret room in his mansion. He's a fucking nerd. Probably for
He's got a lady model revolver, like a cattle prod, and a secret closet. Hammond is a fucking terrifying man.
I do like the fact that you keep calling him Richard Hammond, like the fucking hamster.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. John Hammond. My brain there's room in my brain for one Hammond, and it's that fucker.
Well, like also like the rocks in his backyard are set up to look like the Big Dipper. And where you find the white key card is the star in the Big Dipper that's in his, like, he has like a poster of the Big Dipper in his house, and that star is circled.
This will give me an idea. If you met John Hammond, you would just think intrinsically, this man's a fucking knob. This guy.
Though, I bet there'd be a secret, like, there's another door that goes to his basement. That guy has, like, a genuine, like, Warhammer table, like, proper. like he's put he's, like, built castles out of, like...
Not even a model train set, just a Warhammer set.
Oh, actually, he's of the... he's of the generation that he would have, like, a model train set, never mind.
So. I like him being a Warhammer.
I was going to suggest that he was, like, a lizard folk player from Warhammer Fantasy.
Ooh.
And he's like, man, like, I really like these, like, dinosaur minis.
What if he has both, Snape? What if he imports the orcs?
Oh, that would be sick. Yeah, imagine having, like, a Warhammer, like, table battleground laid out, but you also had a miniature train set on it, so you had the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and because it's all turn-based anyways, like, on your turn you could use the train. And it's like, you're going to get to this spot in 2 turns, so, make sure it's...
This is great. Has this not happened before?
Hey, if anyone has done this, please let us know. And if nobody
Please let me see your Warhammer train set.
Let us see your Warhammer / Hornby mashup.
I don't care about either of these things too much individually, but put together, I'm like, I want to know. I want to see this.
It'd be good.
It'd be great.
It's grand.
Be very good. Have we got any other closing thoughts on Trespasser? Because I am very enamored with Trespasser. I mean, it is the ultimate.
It's very charming, and I think it's a beautiful relic. I think it's it's a bittersweet entity. Is the way I describe it.
Sure, but I think it's almost like as embarrassing as it is to say, it is almost kind of like too beautiful to live, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's like it feels weird to say it's before its time, but it also feels like of no time because it's
the timeline that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, but also kind of did, because you see all of these elements individually elsewhere. This just kind of nonchalantly did all of them. The problem is putting them all together created a mishmash that wasn't too palatable.
It gave people in 1998 a vision into the future. This
and they didn't like what they
saw. The future of gaming.
Isn't
but
that
no one knew it at the time.
Isn't that like a story of like a physicist who predicted something in an era like way before they could have figured it out, and then like years later it was finally proven right?
Oh, that's had to have happened like multiple
I think that's happened a few
history.
times. I know that certain astronomers were like proven right after the fact.
Just on that note, it is really funny how so many people think like flat Earth is a recent thing when we had figured out the Earth was round, and also like heliocentrism fucking centuries ago, but we like to live with the idea that we only cracked that one recently.
I always find it weird that like just being a flat... Well, also the weird thing is that like people pretend that flat earthers have only been around since TikTok, and it's like, no, there have been people who have believed in the flat Earth since like for fucking centuries.
Yeah. But also, we've had people who've known it's not for just as long.
Oh, no, I know.
Right. Yeah,
like
it didn't take us literally going up, in a really tall airplane to learn that it wasn't flat.
Like, Roman fuckers figured that out with sticks in the ground. Just going like, oh yeah, this is how the line works.
I mean, I guess, like, on the subject of, like, other, random Trespasser things before we come to a close.
Yes.
So I was talking about this game with someone else, and they asked me a very simple question. That they said, so is Jurassic Park Trespasser a good game? And that question kind of fried my brain because, it's really hard for me to say. Because, like, I appreciate it, even though I think it is such a flawed entity. I ended up just, like, giving a very long, convoluted answer.
I actually thought about it, and, like, my answer would be kind of a cop-out. But I just think answering "is it good" is so tricky. Sometimes I'll just say
Yeah.
My answer would be I had fun playing it, because I think that's the best I could probably fucking do with that.
Not to
Yeah,
say
well,
this.
I think I said, like, what does good and bad even mean?
Oh no.
Yeah, that's what I didn't want to go down the philosophical route.
What is
Right.
good? What is good, really? I was gonna say I don't want to turn this podcast into every conversation I've had recently. I'm just gonna put on air, but Trespasser is one of those things that, like, would I like? Is it a good game? Yes. Would I recommend people to play it? Depends on the person. I think if you've
because we talked
Yeah.
when you mentioned that conversation the other day, Chariot, and I was also talking to someone in work, and I explained to them what Trespasser was, and kind of got a look. And bear in mind, the place I work, freelancer, but the place I work is like a video game trailer company. So these are people who, I mean, they mostly do fucking mainstream stuff. So yeah, even then I can't be too surprised. But it's like just explaining it, just getting a look from the guy I'm chatting to, and at the end of it is like, would you recommend it? And I had to kind of go, just maybe. Do you want to try something interesting?
If I was running to like a university course or like had a museum on like video games, then like that would be where I put Trespasser. Like, I think as a object of curiosity and something to learn from. Like, if you're a nerd, like if you listen to Bullet Time, I'm not saying that everybody who listens to Bullet Time is a nerd, but if you're probably into FPS games, if you listen to this podcast,
And you're
you
probably
probably
into the
already
weirder
played
FPS
Trespasser
games.
if you listen to this podcast. But if you haven't, then obviously, yeah, you should play it just as this little as Chariot said, this weird evolutionary offshoot of the FPS that came out of the evolutionary offshoot of fucking the same year that fucking, Wolfenstein 3D came out. Ultima Underworld, the Stygian Abyss also came out, which is the lineage of this game. Like the first game that Origin that then became Looking Glass Studios eventually became. But like for the average like FPS player, yeah, I mean, of what we've covered, I mean, I don't even know what I would recommend to them. Maybe Black and
I
maybe
think Black and Time Splitters would be the easiest Rex.
Time
Yeah.
Splitters. Yeah, Time Splitters 2. Like that's it. Time Splitters 2 is like the game that I could recommend to everybody. Like, even if they've never. Like if somebody said, "Oh, I want to get into FPS games," I'd probably say, "Oh, well, maybe play one of the newer Doom games, or play Time Splitters 2." Trespasser is kind of more the advanced course. Like all the people that we know who write video essays, they should all play Jurassic Park Trespasser. Like, especially I don't know Jacob Geller or something, because then he could make a video about Jurassic Park Trespasser. Maybe they'll make a new one because of that.
This is the long con that you're playing.
What is just to trick all my pals who have millions of subscribers to Rasputin? He could make a video on shit.
Yeah, and then
I made my wife play Trespasser.
Trespasser for a non-trespasser. And then,
Trespasser for somebody who doesn't even play FPS games.
and then then DreamWorks Interactive will be reformed, and then Spielberg will come back and just back into the lab and say, "Right, boys, we tried this 20 years ago, but I'm thinking I'm back."
I love the fact that you said Spielberg back in the lab like he's Dr. Dre. Like, yo, let's kill this shit. Like,
Yeah. Well, I guess like the whole Rasputin thing. Like, I do wonder, like, is this game maybe easier for people that haven't played any first-person shooters?
Yeah, because there'd be no preconceived notions of how it should work. It's actually
it's more like
when Dark Souls first came out, I had a friend who watched a ton of people play Dark Souls. I know it's a very odd thing. And they noticed people who had no gaming experience would oftentimes adapt to Dark Souls better than people who played games.
I can see that.
Because they had no notions of how like things would function to kind of get tripped up over. They treated it kind of organically and diegetically.
I just realized all the tablet kids, all the naughty tablet kids that we have now, who are used to playing the meme games that Markiplier and PewDiePie play, they'd be fucking savants at
Maybe.
Trespasser.
I couldn't say for that.
They would.
I would love to watch one of those children play Trespasser, though.
They fucking ace it.
regardless of how good they are at it.
God.
I'd love to watch that experiment.
Or are they now too soaked into Fortnite that they can only, they're just too used to twin sticks now?
Yeah, it has no marketable characters.
Not true. It has Anne's boobs and the Velociraptors.
Yeah,
Those could be marketable plushes. I'd buy those.
Marketable plush of just Anne's boobs.
Oh fuck! Like, do you remember when
maybe you could get like a pillow.
the Dead Island special edition where it was just a woman's torso?
Oh,
I
God.
worked with a guy who was like, "Oh yeah, I gotta have that." And it's like,
What?
why? And he's like, "I love zombie stuff and I love special editions of stuff." And it's like, fuck, like. Joe Marketing is going to come when he meets you. Like,
fucking hell, you are the easiest mark in the world.
You genuinely are.
I love zombie stuff.
I love special editions of stuff.
I am the most pure consumer the world has ever
I am
met.
the average man. I like to go out on the weekend and drink lager. Yeah.
Fucking hell.
But yeah, no, the famous Dead Island torso. Like, that they sold with Dead Island 1.
No, wasn't it? No, it was Dead Island Riptide the torso, I believe.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, it was with Riptide.
Don't know why I remember that, but I remember the controversy.
Because it was just a woman's. Yeah, it was just a woman's torso.
Dead Island has a rockety marketing history if you think about it. Dead Island 1 had that trailer. Dead Island Riptide had the fucking torso.
And Dead Island 2 just didn't come out for 8 years. They said, we did the episode on Homefront the Revolution, and they said, all right, lads, let's just get it out. Now that people know about this game, let's just get it out. And they did. And apparently it's okay.
Yeah, I have not played it.
The people that I know who have played it, including some people who have been on Bullet Time, have said it is F-I-N-E fine. So, there you go. That's Dead Island 2. That's Jurassic Park.
What a note to end on. We made it. We've gone from Dinosaur Island to a zombie island.
And now we're going to Chart Island because...
Oh, boy.
Ooh.
It's been so long.
I know, it has been a while since we've done the charts. And this is going to be a really fun chart because this would have qualified for the charts October 31st, 1998. 3 years before you were born.
I'd say this is mean because Chariot wasn't even.
Yeah, I was going to say Chariot. You were born 3 years before this fucking 3 years after this game came out, right?
Just 2 years.
2 years,
2000.
Right. Okay.
Meanwhile,
but still,
I would have
there's
been.
Just so many things from the 90s.
I would have been 5. Jesus. All right, not that I remember anything.
Also, what made this slightly harder is that I couldn't find the American charts at the time, so this is through Chart Trek, so this is slightly more Eurocentric, but I will... A lot of these aren't too European, but I will try my best to kind of help Chariot out where I can. But Chariot, you're a game guy, you should
think what games
I know of many games.
Yeah.
I just don't trying to think how
distinctly
European this could be. Like, there's just some game that only fucking came out in France. Made for the French audience.
These are all
that RTS about Napoleon where he fights eldritch horror.
The GBA one, yeah, and it only has 2 language options, which is Japanese and French.
Now you see, this is why I'm at a disadvantage because I was making up a hypothetical joke, and then Chariot came up with, "Oh yeah, there is this game." I'm like, "Oh yeah,
no, I knew about that as well."
Pro.
That game's published by Nintendo as well, isn't it? Like,
yes, it is.
It's really
it eventually got re-released on the Virtual Console, but only in France, I think.
Only in France.
Like only in
they
France.
They were the only ones who would buy
Japan.
it.
They're the only ones who wanted it.
I kind of want it from the sounds of it. Napoleon.
It is actually kind of one. Just the fact that it's an RTS on the Game Boy Advance is kind of impressive.
Yeah.
And then the fact that it starts off like historical fiction where you're fighting like the actual battles of Napoleon, and then it slowly devolves into just more and more cosmic horror.
Wait. What do you mean devolves?
I mean, you're fighting the French. They're already kind of an eldritch beast.
Yeah.
You're not fighting the French, you are the French. But then the French did wind up not liking Napoleon, so kind of comes back around.
Because it was too base.
Yeah, and then they had to leave him on Based Island with all the dinosaurs.
Yeah. But then he walked back and
don't worry, it's just a name.
Wow, cool. Napoleon's back.
It's actually a peninsula.
It's actually a peninsula. The Based Peninsula. Okay, number 1 in the charts this week. Up from 16th place last week, so this has gone all the way back to number 1 from 16th place, is a PlayStation 1 game, and it's a platform game.
Platform game?
It's a platform game?
It's a platform.
Is it Crash Bandicoot?
It is not a Crash Bandicoot.
Is it Spyro?
It is Spyro the Dragon for the PS1.
Okay.
All right, Chariot, points on the board. I feel less
when
bad
you said
about
PlayStation, my brain went, oh, it's got to be Grand Theft Auto, until you said platform.
I mean, that's kind of a platformer.
It's a platformer of sorts.
Number 2 is a new entry this week. This is slightly more UK-centric, but it's a sport that's done all... Okay, so it's a sports game. It's a sport that's done all around the world. PS1. And the funny caption that I wrote next to it earlier in the week was, quote, a game for racists.
Oh.
NASCAR, which is not done the world over. But
well, that's very American.
Yeah, I know. There's an immediate few problems with my guess.
It's not NASCAR, but it is a sport that's in cars.
Yeah, okay. So is it Gran Turismo?
It is not Gran Turismo.
Oh.
I'm gonna give Chariot a guess.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of sport Europe
motorsports. It is a motorsport.
Some motorsport game, and I can't even think of that many that aren't like.
I think it's too early for Colin McRae to have come onto the scene.
So Colin McRae is number 5 on this list, so I'll give you that.
Okay, right.
The first Colin McRae rally is number 5, down from 2nd place.
Never mind me then. It wasn't too early.
Nope. But number 2 is another motorsport, another racing game, popular in Europe, but also popular in the States as well, sort of.
Was it an F1?
Is it F1?
It is. I will give you to it because the game is literally called Formula 198.
Okay.
One.
You know, it was fucking funny to me is, that there was that long period, and there still kind of is, where every year you would just get sports game 05. I find it really funny that on the PS2 there was just a game called Rugby. No, it was just Rugby. And I see that so often in CEX.
I think what's even funnier is that you had like FIFA 98, blah blah blah, but then you literally should have a game called This Is Football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what this is? It's fucking football.
This is fucking
it's
football.
Definitively.
Lasts for all of time.
You go and
fuck all the imitators, get the real football.
You go to like primary school and your PT's just like, yeah, we're doing football today, and then you go outside and he literally just throws a disc on the field and he goes, there we go, that's football. Sorry, we'll go back to the quiz in a second, but I'm just thinking about, because I made a joke earlier in the week about Go-Go Beckham Adventures on Sucker Island. And so, do you remember the fucking David Beckham PS2 football game where the advertisement was his bald head, but he had the PlayStation controller port on his head?
I don't remember that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's just like stuck in my memory, because it's just, just him with the shaved head, but like, and it's not like a tattoo, it's not fire, it is like genuine, like a deep PS1 controller pod just on his head.
I'm imagining, like, how many board meetings do they have? Like, okay, how do we sell the idea that this is David Beckham? Like, okay, how about we make his bald head like the texture of a fucking stick? No. Right.
Why don't we just Photoshop his face onto one of the DualShock controls?
Why don't we why don't we have a picture of a PS2 controller, but like the thumbsticks are like little him mushrooms, where it's just him coming out.
That does remind me of I think it's like Bust a Move, where like just like the gameplay is photoshopped onto like the glasses of like a baby.
Oh, I posted the baby. That's classic. Because I think we made a joke about that earlier, like a couple of weeks ago, which was that this is what, like, in the dark timeline, this is what the US box art would look like for Katamari. And it's just a guy, like a fucking stock image of a guy pushing around a thing and then the text says, big ugly ball of stuff, or whatever it is. And it is because, like, with fucking not only the fact that they called it Bust a Move instead of Puzzle Bobble, they were like, oh, nobody's going to buy this, it has cute dinosaurs on it. Let's sell a picture of a disgusting baby with Super Buster Move tattooed across his head.
I don't know. I quite like that cover, if I'm honest. It's so fucking eye-grabbing.
I love the contrast of that cover, too, with, like, the PlayStation version, which is like it's like the ball with like the
Oh
face,
yeah, it's
but
just the
like eyes are,
screaming
like,
guys, and it's like, yo, this game will make you mental. Like,
it's just like the same game as the baby. It's so different box arts.
they should do that with Pikmin, where it's like the Japanese one is just the cute guys on the cover, but then the American one is just like
A guy
screaming and flowers growing out of his head.
I don't know why, but I'm still on this fucking David Beckham visualization, but now I'm just drawn... I don't know why I've visualized a PS2 controller where instead of X, square, triangle, and circle, the X is a mouth, the triangle is a nose, and square and circle are eyes.
Oh, that's it. I'll make that the cover art for this. People look at that and it's like, I thought there was something about the fucking dinosaur game. What the hell is this? Well, they'll just have to listen to the episode to find out. But
To get context, 3 hours into why it's that cover.
I was thinking as well that it's just like, because I don't know like how big David Beckham was as a figure over in the States, even though he did go over for a while to like teach football and like run the LA soccer team. But just like there's this image of him like this Geiger-like being with like a computer interface on his head. But then like you actually like listen to David Beckham speak in interviews and it's just I don't know, there's just something about his voice that is just like it's like Prince Pratt's voice. It just takes any kind of it's just complete bathos or bathos. I can't remember what the term is. But
You're gonna get shit for it either way. You say it one way, people will say, no, you don't say it that way.
Oh, God damn it.
It's actually pronounced BathOS.
Oh yeah, I love BathOS. I have it on my Palm Pilot. But yeah, David Beckham. Not number 2, because that was Formula 1 98. Number 3 this week, though, down from first place. This is another game for racists, another racist game for the PS1.
Fucking hell, racing was dominating at the time.
Especially in the UK as well, on the chart track as well. We love racing games. I like racing games. Well, maybe we'll do racing games on this.
The UK does love their racists.
This is a series that I didn't play, and this is a motorsport that doesn't really get a lot of representation. I'll tell you I'll tell you what sport it is, and then Snake, I'll see if you can remember the acronym. It's touring cars, which is like was technically what Gran Turismo is based on, but it's not Gran Turismo.
Is it Dakar?
No, but it is another 4-letter acronym that ends in car. As in CA.
I don't. No, I'm not having the foggiest. Give me a minute.
That's all right. Cherry, I'll give you a chance as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, oh man,
It's actually kind of like
a really big blind spot.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about touring cars. I'm afraid. So
no.
Like I was wondering, like when you said it was like a race, like a motorsport that got less attention, I was wondering if it might be like an ATV game. Cause,
no.
Growing up, I actually played quite a bit of ATV. Like Off-Road Fury, that series. But
MTV.
No,
MVP?
it's not an off-roader. It's like like British touring cars, like where you literally just see cars go around a big lap and you just clap for them. Tiff Needell is a commentator for this sport.
I've got nothing.
I've got nothing.
We'll go past it then because I don't think anyone's. I wouldn't even get this. It is TOCA, TOCA.
No, that would have never come to me.
No, fair enough. Number 4, up from 6th place, is an N64 racing game.
Fucking hell!
Oh,
not one you would think of. It's not a. When I say race it, and when I say it's a racing game, it's not really a game for races because it's not a motorsport game. It's a racing of a different kind.
Is it based on a cartoon?
No.
Is it Diddy? There's the Diddy flying game.
It's not Diddy Kong Racing, and neither is it Mario Kart.
It's
not a cartoon.
Is it like Wave Racer?
No, but it is one of the same developers as Wave Race.
Oh.
It is a sport. It's one of my favorite games of all time is based on this sport. But my favorite game of all time is made by EA. This one was made by Nintendo, and I think it sucks.
Okay, God. We're just finding out, appropriately enough for racing games, we have a major blind spot here.
Yeah.
I think there's like a really kind of dodgy like Easter egg in this, or like a piece of video game history to do with this game, where the initial Japanese version of it had a track in it that then got patched out of international versions, where it's just like it's like a Flatboy Slim style big beat track with just a guy underneath. It's just with a guy's vocals over going homosexual.
Oh.
Okay, so wait, but one of your favorite games ever?
So it's a racing game, but does not involve any motor.
No, it is a racing game that involves it's a people-driven racing game. It's not to do with no cars or carts. It's people on a thing.
Is it bicycles?
Oh,
it is not bicycles. No,
skateboards.
It is boards.
Oh, this
Hoverboards.
has got to be a snowboarding game.
It is a snowboarding game, but do you know which one?
oh, is it SSX Tricky?
No,
No, that's the EA. No, those are the EA games that I like.
You know what?
Okay.
Do you know what's fucking with me now, James? You know what's so annoying?
What?
I had a snowboard racing game on the N64, and I don't remember the name of it, but it
And it's
sucked.
probably this game. It's probably this
probably
game
was.
that I think is shit.
Yeah, no, I don't remember it either. I remember it being bad. So I played
Damn,
a
this
game
is
that
the-
I can't name.
Darn.
See, this is the problem. If I had like a Nintendo tuber on this podcast, which you know,
They would have cracked
Yeah,
this one.
they would have
no.
fucking nailed this. The moment when I said homosexual.
Okay, well, we know it's a snowboarding
Yeah, no,
game,
like-
so we just got to guess. Like,
It's just,
I just have to guess this skateboard or
just got to guess the
yeah,
name.
You know what? I'm even gonna give you
snowboarding
this.
game that came out.
The game is
before
literally
I was
called
born.
blank snowboarding. If you can guess the blank, I'll give it to you.
Extreme snowboarding.
It is not extreme snowboarding. I'll give you another clue.
Cold
It's a number.
snowboarding.
No, it's not.
Oh, I
Fun
think I've heard of this
snowboarding.
game before, but I cannot remember it for the life of me.
Gym
Like, I'm
snowboarding.
trying to remember this adjective.
It is.
N64 snowboarding.
Is it?
You know,
Is it?
you know
wild
what?
or
Let's
no-
do this. Let's do this like the Price is Right. Snake, you said 1064 snowboarding. Cherry, you come up with a number, and whoever is closest, I'll give you the points.
All right, 1564.
1080.
Oh, yeah, Snake, you got it. It's 1080 snowboarding.
Yeah, it fucking came back.
Oh,
When you say it came back, I just want to imagine that it flew through your window. Like,
Yeah.
there it is.
It clocked me in the head.
Ouchie. Yeah, 1080 snowboarding from the N64. A game that I think is really bad.
It's fucking bad.
It is shit.
It unlocked the memory of the fact that I owned that game.
That and
And you know what? Actually, no. Do you want to know my one memory of playing that game?
Yeah.
It's not a good memory. It just points to what a shitty child I was. That a friend was playing it and they were just having a really bad time with it. And because I remember the commentator in that game was a real dickhead, so I was just adding insults as well. And a friend just stopped playing and turned to me and said, "You're really rude, you know that." And that gave me pause as like a child. It's like, damn, I was just bluntly fucking put in my place.
Wow.
Like a friend of the same age just fucking bluntly let me know. And I was like, okay, shit.
I just like the idea that you were just
Wow.
sitting there, just like contemplating, and then like, shit, am I racist? God.
that's the real thing you take away from
That's what you learn when
Yo.
you play 1080 snowboarding.
1080 snowboarding.
The thing I took away from it is the track that they removed of the guy saying homosexual non-stop. Also the fact it's not a very good game. If anyone in this comment section is a Nintendo fan and wants to disagree with me, it's your bedtime. Go to bed. No, go to bed.
Go lay under your terrible shelf of games.
Yeah. Number 5 you already guessed is Colin McRae Rally for the PC and PS1.
Didn't even guess that. That's like a shitty guess of, oh, that probably doesn't exist yet. No, that's that one. Oh.
No, not only does it exist, it's number 5 on the list.
Not only does
number
not only does it
six-
exist, it's doing well.
No, number 6 on the list, by the way, up from 32nd place to 6th place this week, is a game that you also mentioned earlier for the PS1 when you were trying to guess Spyro the Dragon.
Crash Bandicoot.
Not Crash Bandicoot, it was the other one.
Oh,
What the fuck was the other one?
the other PlayStation one.
The other game that you associate with the PlayStation.
Grand Theft Auto?
It is Grand Theft Auto for the PC and the PS1. At number 6 this week. Grand Theft Auto, which I didn't realize. For some reason, I only thought the third one was the popular one. No, apparently 1 and 2 were fucking enormously successful as well.
I didn't even really... I mean, it was probably on a very different degree when it hit free.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was on the degree of, like, games back then, if you sold 1 million copies, like, that was, like, seen as a genuine success.
Yeah.
This is like the time that free, like, the PS2 came out, like, you know, selling, like, 10 million, like, that was the new thing. This is now where it's like you have to sell, like, 100 million copies or whatever to be considered a success.
To break even.
Yeah.
Yeah. The investors still want, like, more copies to be sold.
What a world.
What a time.
Speaking of what a world. Number 7, down from 3rd place last week, is another game in a sport that we've already guessed. And this was one for the N64.
N64
this is
sport
football.
game.
It's not This Is Football, because we haven't guessed
Is it Mario Kart 64?
It is not Mario Kart 64. It is another motorsport game, which is a motorsport that we guessed earlier.
NASCAR.
Not NASCAR.
Dakar.
Not Dakar.
Not surprised the Dakar game wasn't selling.
Yeah.
Um...
Is it Wave Race 64?
It's not Wave Race 64, no. What is second place on this chart that has already been guessed for the PS1? This is the N60... Well, it's like an N64... Not version, it's its own game, but it's the same sport. Fast cars. Fast cars that you do run lots of laps.
N64 version of that. Was an N64 sim racer.
I mean, I'm trying to remember it. Like, I don't think an F-Zero game came out on the N64.
No, but it's the F that's before F-Zero.
What was the predecessor to fucking Project Gotham? Was it like Metropolitan
Oh,
Street Racer?
Metrosexual Street Racer, yeah.
Yeah.
What about it? That's on the Dreamcast.
Oh, yeah. Never
The
mind.
F that's before F-Zero.
Yeah. What is the formula before Formula Zero?
F1, well, yeah.
Yeah, it's Formula 1. Well, it's
it's another Formula 1 game.
Yeah, it's another Formula 1 game.
Should have called it Formula 64, and you go really slow.
Yeah, you're like a snail. I don't know if I can give you much clues on this. Whoever said F1 first, I'll give you the point, because the game is F1 World Grand Prix for the N64, a game which I have no idea how it fucking conveys.
I think we both vaguely arrived at it at about the same pace.
Yeah.
I'll give you both. You can both have a point. There you go. Whoever's running the wiki, make a note that they both got a point for that. Now, number 8 on the... Now we're getting to good games. Number 8 on the list, down from 4th place, Capcom game for the PS1.
Capcom PS1.
Capcom
Resident
PS1.
Evil?
It is Resident Evil 1 for the PS1, PC, and Saturn. Is number 8 on the list. Number 9 on the list, down from 5th place, is another PS1 game, and it's a Namco game.
Siphon
Pac-Man
Filter.
World.
I think you were both wrong. You said Pac-Man World. What did you say, Snake?
Siphon Filter.
It is
Which I don't
not
even know if that's Namco, to be
No,
honest. I
that's-
was just...
that is not only is that a Sony game, that is made by Bend, the people who gave us Days Gone, but more famously, Bubsy 3D.
Yeah, I was really shooting in the dark with Siphon Filter. Which is
What
appropriate.
about Mr. Driller?
It is not Mr. Driller, unfortunately.
God, what did Namco... Bomberman.
It's
wait,
not
that's-
Bomberman, that is
that's
Sunsoft.
Hudson
And that's
Soft.
yeah.
Klonoa? Surely Klonoa did not chart.
And unfortunately for the transparency girls, Klonoa did not chart, and it is not Klonoa that's on this. It's one of the big famous Namco franchises.
The big famous Namco franchise.
It has a lot of characters in it.
A lot of characters.
A lot of characters. A lot of playable characters in it.
Is it a fighter?
It is a fighting game.
Is it Tekken?
It is Tekken, but which one?
3.
It is Tekken 3 for the PS1. Number 9 on the list. And now, unfortunately for Chariot, at number 10 it is a Brit game, unfortunately, but it's a non-mover for the PS1 and the PC. It is a sports simulation game.
Football Manager?
Yeah, I'll give you that. It's Premier Manager 98, which is what they call Football Manager at the time. There we go. That is the chart. Number 1 in the charts is Spyro the Dragon. Meanwhile, we talked about a game which were dragons of a different era, which were the dinosaurs, and they were not on the charts, unfortunately. There are some PC games on the charts, but there are also games that came out on the PS1 as well. So
yeah, it's more.
I'm just kind of amazed by the amount of racing game dominance of the era. That's kind
people
of
really people have always really liked racing games.
Well, and like I feel like racing games are maybe a bit more interesting than like most sports games.
I would say they're quite
also
simple to pick up. Like, you literally only need to accelerate and steer versus like football, where you have to be like, oh, I need to move my character and I have to pass the ball and I have to do this and that. Like, that's a little bit... Well, whereas with
also,
a racing game...
people already interact with cars via a control system, so it just translates a lot cleaner to a control.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think as well, speaking of Trespasser that we were talking about earlier, that was a game which was very much on the cutting edge of pushing simulation and stuff like that. Racing games are always quite a good barometer for like seeing like technological improvements, because you can make simulated suspension and like tire pressure and stuff like that more realistic. You can make handling more realistic and stuff like that, and that's kind of more appreciable because that's based on something that you kind of recognize. And also, you can always make the graphics prettier as well.
Well, it's like that Gran Turismo movie
from Gamer to Racist. Yeah,
Stranger Things Hopper gets
he teases the kid how to drive the car.
He's like, oh yeah, he's driven around these tracks virtually so many times, so he can.
You're gonna put a kid into a car. The G-forces will tear him apart.
Coach, I don't know what to do. This was DLC. Well, it ain't DLC anymore. This is real life, kid. Sir, I can only drive the car when Crash Bandicoot's with me. That's how I've always done it. and then Hopper's dressed up like Crash Bandicoot to like get him in the zone.
Oh no, I only played Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed, and then he drives off a cliff. Plane mode, go!
He's just looking around and he's like, hey, where's the guy with the forklift? I like the idea of, rather than a kid who played nothing but Gran Turismo becoming a actual like touring car driver, is a guy who played a lot of Sonic Racing Transformed and then trying to do the same thing.
Turns up on the day of the race for car that he has turned into a submersible.
Oh hell yeah! Yeah, he's just put a he's just sellotape wings and a propeller to his car,
and they're all going, "This kid's insane!" And then it takes off, and I'm like, "Holy shit, he did it!
He's fucking doing it! He's fucking doing it!" Yeah, they're all going
mad.
The
mad actually did it.
The mad lad actually did it.
That's what John Hammond was, and that was John Parker Hammond.
That was he was able to make a car. Yeah, he had the car from Greece. He just drove into the air at the end of Jurassic Park.
Has anyone gotten really mad at that ending for making no sense? Like, cars don't fly.
Yeah, that's true. What the fuck? What Greece was like so realistic up to that point. 30-year-olds playing teenagers.
Meant to believe this.
Seeing an angel come down from heaven telling you to go back to college. Yeah, like it was fine with
no. Them flying off in the car at the end is a metaphor for them getting into a car crash.
Yeah, that's have you not?
Oh yeah, like the whole movie is in their head.
No, only at that point they just literally crashed seconds up before the ending.
Have you not seen my video essay, The Dark Secret of Greece?
The whole film is literal up until that point.
I'm one of those YouTube guys who literally just makes every single video that I make is like, actually this all took place in a coma fantasy and the character's dying. That's my really interesting media crit on every single property.
Has anyone done that for the Star Wars sequel trilogy? I think that would calm things down, even though that is long cold in the ground.
Oh my god, that's why.
I feel like people would have tried to like wish that into existence.
The best one was Mr. B-Tongue when he did that for Mass Effect 3, where he said the game didn't happen because it was to do with because he was indoctrinated at that point and it was all in his head.
No, I think B-Tongue was not pro-indoctrination theory.
He literally made a video called like Mass Effect 3 Indoctrination Theory, which was like a cut. He did like an early version of the Crocat vid.
Okay,
But
he was on the cutting edge.
he really was. So we're gonna cut.
But what did he eat? But what did he eat?
What did he eat?
in Mass
What did
Effect
what did
3?
Mr. B-Tongue eat before he made all those videos? That's what I want to know. What did the dinosaurs eat in Trespasser?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, their
nothing.
hunger was
They
set
had
to
maximum
max.
hunger.
So,
Oh,
actually,
so
yeah,
they
they were-
really wanted to eat.
They were maximum hangry. That's true. Yeah. Oh. Speaking of maximum hangry, thank you both for coming onto this episode to talk about Trespasser, especially Chariot. This has been a long time coming. We've been planning this episode. We've been talking about doing this for like over a year at this point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like when I started this, because like I first had to like figure out how to get the game running, and at the time I had a Windows 98 virtual machine.
Yeah.
And then I had to like I spent so long trying to set it up, only to realize that Windows 98 in the virtual machine setting cannot emulate like video graphics cards.
Nope.
So I couldn't run the game, and then I had to upgrade to like Windows XP, and then like I had to deal with a bunch of sound card issues and like downloading special sound drivers, and then I got it running, played it in Windows XP, and then eventually I played it in Windows 10. I think that's been over several months, just periodically returning to Trespasser.
Yeah. And how do you feel now that you've finally beaten Trespasser? And talked about Trespasser?
I think it's a interesting game that I'm definitely glad to have played it, because I don't think I've played anything else like it. But I it's not a game that I'm really hankering to
Return to.
ever.
I think 2 gives you kind of all you need.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like get into the speed run scene.
Oh, that'd be
for,
good though.
Trespasser.
There are Trespasser speedruns.
We really didn't tackle custom levels and that.
No, we kind of very briefly
No.
mentioned it at the end of that. The fact that there is such a huge community around it who are patching stuff in, and I think, that was where I got into my weird my crisis point, is that the people who have gelled with this game have like massively gelled with it to a point that they want to keep Trespasser alive. And I think part of the thing with Bullet Time is that like I have to kind of keep reminding myself that not everybody knows everything that I know. So, like, some people may discover games they've never heard of on this podcast. And Trespasser, I think, is maybe a perfect example of that. It's well known within kind of our circles, just as, like, video game trivia of, like, oh, yeah, this was a notorious bomb. But, like, beyond that, I don't think it's that particularly well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just kind of... It didn't become, like, infamously, like, bad.
It's not Duke Nukem Forever.
No. Yeah, no, it's nothing like that.
And I think like a lot of people know it like bombs, but they didn't really know many specifics, maybe beyond like the boobs.
The boobs and the wobbly dinosaurs.
So it was just like something that people vaguely knew was kind of bad, without necessarily being able to go into some of the specifics.
Oh, and hopefully we've been able to shine some light on it. And like I said, not a game for everybody, but if you're into the history of FPS stuff, then definitely give it a go. If you're a game developer, give it a fucking... Like I said, just make a comedy. Literally just remake this game, but sell it as a comedy version of Trespass. Just call it Dinosaur Island Simulator.
Just replace
all those like cartoon
John
sound
Hammond
effects.
with like a drunk guy who's just going on about I wanted a dinosaur.
Oh, just use John Hammond's audio, but do that thing where you slow it down to 8% speed so he just sounds drunk.
Oh my god!
I was in London.
Hammond. I met a girl at a party.
I sat outside a bench in Washington waiting to hear what happened next. Yeah, because that's how it ends, right? It's just him in fucking court for fucking Jurassic Park. Why did you do
Look
this?
upon my works, ye mighty, and
tremble.
despair.
And then Breaking Bad rips him off. They said, hey, we'll do that too, but instead of building a dinosaur theme park, he's just going to make a lot of meth. I don't know, it seems easier in hindsight.
Yeah, true. Like, why? If you were so clever, why didn't you extract blood from a mosquito and then...
I'm just laughing at the idea that that's how Walter White decided to make money, is not by making methamphetamine. It was trying to bring dinosaurs back.
Walter and fucking...
I mean,
I like the idea as well. That he still gets fucking divorced because of it.
Well, you maybe instead of like instead of Hank having his rock phase, it's Walter White. And he's just buying tons of rocks.
He's buying tons of.
I need to find the amber.
He's buying tons of amber, yeah, with like mosquitoes in it. And just Walt Jr. is just like, I wish you would fucking care about us more than you do the dinosaurs, Dad. And that's why he likes Jesse, because he's more into dinosaurs than Walt Jr. is.
Instead of fucking killing Crazy 8 in the basement, he just throws him down there with a velociraptor.
Oh yeah, rather than melting him in the bath, there's just a wobbly velociraptor in the bathroom that keeps bumping into him. And that's why Polysamonis wants him, because, chickens are a close relationship to velociraptors. He wants to make big chicken wings with them.
Oh, that's true.
Damn. Brought it all full circle. Chariot, is there anything you'd like to promote while you're on the podcast? Do you think you'll make a Trespasser video?
I had like, when I had first played this game, I had considered, throwing something together. And I think I was going to, essentially just talk about like, hey, like this is like a really interesting game that like did a lot of stuff that later stuff, would pull from.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a really interesting moment in FPS history. But because of my recording, the way it did it is it changed resolution, and so then it messed up the OBS window where I only got like a quarter of the screen.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have any footage, and I did not feel like diagnosing that. OBS problem and replaying Trespasser, but I did record this playthrough, so I have the footage, and who knows, maybe I will do a Trespasser video.
We're not gonna hold you to
maybe
it.
after this fishing video.
Oh yeah, you are. At the time of this recording, you are working on a fishing video, which should hopefully be pretty good.
Yeah, it should be neat.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it doesn't take too long, though I did kind of have to put it on the back burner for like my other actual writing job.
Oh yes.
So because that has actual deadlines, that always has priority.
Of course. Yeah. Speaking of actual deadlines, Snake, thank you for coming back for all the time. I keep doing these segues that literally make no fucking sense, but I just find them very funny to do.
I wonder where you're going with it. Speaking of deadlines, like, wait, what's going on?
Speaking of deadlines, Snake, I'm going to shoot you. What?
Oh, fuck.
Oh, shit. Oh, my arm's too wobbly. I can't aim. Thanks for coming back. Is there anything you'd like to promote while you're here?
I do very long videos. I don't know why. I don't know why I feel very weird doing a shout out to a podcast, but I binge listened to a podcast called Two Good Boys recently, so I just want to shout that one out, I guess. It's a very funny podcast, which is just filled with very, very good patter. It's a way of putting it. It's a comedy podcast. I quite enjoy it.
I'll pop a link to Two Good Boys, yeah?
Two Good Boys on the Pleasurelands channel.
Nice, so pop a link to that.
I do kind of want to do a thing now if we do more episodes. I just want to see if I can just find a new channel I'm into each time and be like, it'll get weirder and weirder as the rabbit holes get stranger.
I'm trying to think now if there's a channel I can shout out. I am going to say that, like I said, Jacob and Raz, I don't know if Trespassers really in their wheelhouse. Super Eye Patch Wolf, I think, could make a video about Trespasser. I think he could make
interesting.
I could see him being like.
I
was gonna start doing an offensive Irish accent, and then I thought better not actually. And even then, it wouldn't have been offensive in like. It's just more of a bad impression of him. Not like I was gonna start, singing.
You're justifying this accent you didn't do.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna start singing like bring out your black and tans or anything like that. That would have been very inappropriate. But Super Eye Patch Wolf, though. I mean, he made a video about...
He's just shopping this game around to video makers.
Wait, so I can see...
You just, like, mail copies of this.
Yeah, I am. I'm gonna send...
You're like Matt Pat giving fucking the Pope Undertale.
Yeah, the Super Eye Patch Wolf is my Pope, and Trespasser is my Undertale, and I'm giving it... God. I can see him do it, though. I mean, he makes videos about... forgotten games, and this has a big influence. I could see him and his voice say, like, oh, this is the game that set the bar for every other game going forward, kind of thing, which is unsubstantiated, but I think he could sell that. Just
I'd love to see the gaming historian talk about Trespasser.
Ooh, yeah, gaming historian would be very good. Oh, he mostly does Nintendo. Actually, no. He should do Trespasser.
I don't want a game dungeon on Trespasser. Thinking about it.
No, I can exactly see it in my head, and it's like, I want Ross to talk about FMV games.
Yeah, I want him to do something weirder, like, unless he's got, I don't know, I feel that he could go on a weird tangent about dinosaurs, though.
He's actually made dinosaurs.
Do the thing he did in the Trackmania video.
He starts breaking down how Hammond's, like, business plan was crap and how it could be done better.
Yeah.
Like, if I was Hammond, I would have moved all the dinosaurs to here, and then I would have done this and this, and just going, okay, Ross, why do you know so much about cults? What's going on here?
Oh yeah, that's always Swede's point in it. It's like, why does he know so much about cults? And it's like, a lot of people are interested in cults. You don't have to have been in a cult to be into cults.
Well, and also, Scott did play Cult Simulator.
Yeah, that's why.
Ages ago.
Yeah, that's why I feel that way. It's like, you know your stuff.
It's the meme in it. It's just like, I don't know why so many people are asking me about my t-shirt, which already answers the question or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm James. You can follow me on Twitter /X at HotCider, HOTCYDER. You can support the podcast over on Patreon at HotCider as well if you'd like more episodes and potentially pitch episodes. That's something that I'm open for as well. Always love to hear more weird FPS games that we can look into. But until the next episode of Bullet Time, and I am stretching this out because I was trying to think of a dinosaur version of Keep Blasting. I can't. Fuck.
Keep trespassing.
Keep trespassing.
Too many syllables on that one.
I was going to say, I should have just said keep wobbling, because I can't say wobbling. I can't say
just
wobbling.
Cut all this out. Just go, keep wobbling.
Keep wobbling first.
Oh.
The Bullet Time podcast is made possible by Arcadeology, Eric Hamilton Schneider, GamePlayer 1500, Mouse, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/Hot Cider. That's HOTCYDER. A special thanks to Max Coburn for the Bullet Time theme tune.